people blamed Trump and Republicans for the crazy, for the conspiracy theories. Voters did. NPR had a poll, I think, in 2017 saying 70% of voters blame Trump and Republicans for the toxicity in our politics. And, there was a moral and intellectual high ground, I think, long in the Democratic Party. There hasn't been widespread political violence coming from the left since the 70s with the Weather Underground, Black Panthers, et cetera. There's obviously been anti-government violence. You've got like Black Bloc, Antifa types and whatever. But there has been an uptick in partisan motivated, not just violence, but plots. There was somebody who showed up at the Capitol last year wanting to kill Pete Hegseth. That person was arrested. There's obviously 2 of the 3 attempted assassins on Donald Trump sounded like they had left-leaning political views. And again, back to the random people on the internet thing.
The last guy for sure did. The Tyler Robinson guy, I'm sorry. Like, there is just we can't one-drop rule ideology for leftists. That's just bullshit, okay? We're not playing that game. If this guy would have been 22 years old, raised in a woke SJW dyed-haired community with a whole bunch of trans people, it doesn't matter what. This guy could have said the most right-wing shit ever for the last 6 months and nobody would have given a fuck. The idea that this guy raised in the white Mormon community with MAGA parents is all of a sudden treated as a leftist because he was dating a trans person, like, this is like the most conservative thing ever, is to be secretly addicted to cock, especially for Mormons. And you're telling me that we're going to count this person as a leftist? Give me a break. Come on.
It's not coming from Democratic politicians. It's not. It's really not. Now, there's like Jasmine Crockett posted a conspiracy theory the other day that the attack on the Washington Hilton might have been a false flag.
Oh, shit. I'm thinking of Tyler Robinson, the shooter on Trump, or on Charlie Kirk. I'm sorry. The weird guy, fuck, I don't remember his name. I feel bad. The one who killed the firefighter, I'm pretty sure that dude was a registered Republican. The guy outside, I don't know about the guy outside. Is that outside the White House? He didn't even shoot anything, right? I didn't look at that guy's ideological background. Or I don't know if that guy had a coherent one. That guy seemed a little bit loony. Like a little schizo-y. And then the last guy for sure seemed like a liberal, super pro, like, I guess like super pro Ukraine. Seemed like a big driver for, I guess, like his political stuff.
Or whatever. The problem is the diminishing power of people like me and the mainstream press and the diminishing ability of normie politicians to get out there in the information ecosystem and have people hear them. That stuff is being replaced just by noise and slop on the internet. And it does seem like, to me, and I think the evidence in the polling bears this out, that, liberals and progressives, and by the way, some of these people might just be fake bots. They might, J.D. Vance likes to totally, in the right, completely exploit, even the fringiest thing that you found on the internet and pretend it's like the mainstream view of the Democratic Party. And I make clear in the piece, as you read, Democrats aren't the ones saying this. It is, though, kind of ambient on the internet. And I think I actually wanted to ask you about this. The Michelle Obama, they, when they go low, we go high thing. That feels dead and gone and like millennial cringe at this point. In the second Trump term, it has been celebrated that like we're going to fight dirty. And I'm not trying to be civility police either, dude, at all.
No,
but like people just feel like, okay, we're going to play on their terms, get in their sandbox, we're going to throw punches, call names, and then then maybe you end up with a guy who's got a screw loose, who hears.
Like again, this is one of the big issues that I talk about with media as well. Like if. Sorry, fuck. I have to get rid of this impression. I have this reaction when I'm about to say some shit that's just like so fucking obvious that it should have to be said. I just don't want to even talk about it. I just want to play video games. It should not be acceptable if you're doing reporting or punditry or whatever that you can say they or them. That should not be, no non-binary pronouns anymore. You need to start specifying who you're talking about. The reason why is because I think it would actually offer an insane amount of clarity into the conversations. Because when he says things like
term, it has been celebrated that like we're going to fight dirty. And I'm not trying to be civility police either, dude, at all. But like people just feel like, okay, we're going to play on their terms, get in their sandbox, we're going to throw punches, call names, and then
who though? Who's saying that? It's random people on Twitter. How do you know that? Who's the one that's platforming and highlighting them? It's the Twitter algorithm, right? That's what you need to be talking about, not this idea. You can platform or spotlight literally anybody you want. You can find any opinion in the country. 350 million people. You can manufacture any story that you want. It's about what's being spotlighted and then what's being shoved in front of everybody's face for them to react to, think it's normal, and then also jive with. Like that's the issue. Yeah.
And then maybe you end up with a guy who's got a screw loose, who hears all this stuff on the internet and thinks, I've got to go kill the rapist, fascist, pedophile in the White House. I just think...
Have you heard or watched the recent debate between Counterpoints and Pisco or tomfoolery and Pisco about leftist/Hassan? I tried to watch some of the Counterpoints one. The Pisco debate's the problem is that it's like a 10-hour debate stretched into 3 hours somehow. So I don't know. If you can link me a relevant part, I'll watch. But I'm not going to go through 3 hours of rambling and meta talk before I get to the point.
That it's easier to hear the crazy stuff that the algorithms have poured gasoline on than it ever was. And you just hear it more on the left than I think you used to.
Yeah, it's like there's so many parts that you have to tease out, right? And like, there's a big distinction. It isn't coming from the vast majority of Democratic politicians, right? And there is just a distinction between how responsible elected Republicans are, including the president, versus how responsible elected Democrats are. Even this week, we saw what is obviously a ridiculous prosecution of James Comey. The number of Republicans refusing to criticize that or openly embracing that. People going, members of Congress saying, "Well, look at all the other bad things Jim Comey did," right? It is distinct from political violence, but embracing the jailing of your political enemies on specious reasons is adjacent to a politics in which people can celebrate political violence. But the challenge is most Americans deplore political violence. All the mainstream politicians on the left can deplore political violence. 95% of people say the right thing. Then the next day, 100% of people spend the day talking about what the 5% said and how heinous it is and how it's actually justified in all the rest.
He's closer.
We at Crooked Media, I feel like we take some flack from all directions for this, but we obviously denounce Republicans when they try to exploit political violence. We also try to go after when we see people justifying it. John, as you mentioned, did that as well in the piece. But if everybody but a few are doing the right thing, but we end up talking about what the wrong thing is. Like, I don't know what the right thing. How do you respond in a media environment like that, in which we try to model best behavior? The Democrats say the right thing, but you have Republicans that are going to pull out the worst comments from the internet. You have an algorithm that's going to elevate the most exciting and morally depraved comments.
True.
Like, what do we do? Okay, I agree. There's a problem.
True.
What do we do?
Yeah, well, that's getting you to say that. I know. I mean, you're a sophisticated thinker about this stuff, so it is important to say that there was a problem. And I want to say this isn't just my feelings. This is me being a hack political journalist. I should point out also in the piece, the Center for Strategic and International Studies, which has measured this and has kept track of incidents. 2025 was the first year ever that left-wing violence and plots surpassed right-wing violence and or plots. That's only 8 plots. That's only 8 plots. And this is another thing I need to say. Again, like the left there's no violence, no plots for like 30 years. Most of the actual deaths from political violence in this country over the last 30 years have come from right-wing political violence. And we're talking like in the hundreds. Okay. And so, yes, the baseline for Democrats and the left, whatever the coalition is, was very low. It just has ticked up. And but I think you're, though, right, John. I remember when I worked at CNN back when you were in the White House in the 2010s, there was this like, do you remember watching like cable news in that era? And CNN, where I worked or wherever, like a random Republican state legislator in Missouri would say something loony about abortion or something racist about Obama. And we would all elevate it. We'd be like, this is an example of the Republican Party being nuts. And while the Republican Party does have a tendency to accommodate, and by the way, this is just history, the Birchers and the conspiracy theorists and whatever, you'd hear from someone on Capitol Hill, like someone from like John Thun's office, like, why the fuck are you talking about this random guy in Missouri? And so that is a absolute attentional problem that the press has and kind of always has. By the way, since then, that random state senator in Missouri is now like probably on Capitol Hill in the mainstream of the Republican Party. I just think it is what you guys do. It's that you have to call it out and say there's no room for it. And the other thing we're talking about isn't just violence, it is the conspiracy theorizing. And those two are not the same, but they are connected. The people who, I think, tend to commit acts of violence in the name of politics, like seize on conspiracy theories. They do. I noticed this on Snapchat. When I work at Snap and like posted on Snap, I had a bunch of people in my comments being like fake, stage, whatever. Like, it's not, we don't know that those people are even Democrats. They could just be some teenager like on like sitting in their basement somewhere. But this has been happening. Again, this gets to the higher intellectual standard that I think Democrats used to hold themselves to. In Obama's term, at some point, some press conference in the tan suit era, it might have been like Ed Henry. It was like in the White House briefing room. And there was the latest outrage of the day. Whatever somebody wanted Obama to be outraged about. I think it was Ed Henry. He said, Mr. President, why are you more outraged? And I tried to look this up before coming in. I couldn't find it. Someone listening, please find it. It's probably in Favreau's encyclopedic brain. But Obama looks at him and goes, because I haven't read the briefs. And that was Obama being a lawyer. But it was also just a smart person who hewed closely to facts and didn't want to spout off on something where he didn't know the baseline information. And we've come a long way on the internet since then. Like, social media has rampantly changed how people's instincts when it comes to responding, gathering facts. And, I think that's hurt everybody. It's hurt everybody across the board. And I just think that you see it more now on the left than you used to. I sting out that article with a quote from Isaac Asimov, who became a big Democrat later in his life, hated Nixon, like just a raging Democrat. And he said, like, the anti-intellectual strain in this country was always on the right, and liberals would fight ignorance with knowledge. And conservatives would fight knowledge with ignorance. There's a lot more ignorance out there, man, on the left now. I'm sorry, there just is. And like, maybe I'm just being idealistic about, the great thinkers of the American left and what they cared about compared to the right. But it just feels like the fever swamps of the internet are just grabbing otherwise normal people and yanking them in. And it's depressing to me.
Yeah, I don't know. It's hard not.
Are we going to talk about more specifics on that? Like, what are the left-wing conspiratorial thoughts or the left-wing pieces of misinformation you feel are becoming very popular that weren't before? Are we gonna dig into that at all, or?
It's depressing to me.
Yeah, I don't know. It's hard not to be nostalgic for how we used to have information. I see it too, and I do think it's more than just a few random people. There is something that has happened, and it isn't coming from the politicians. I do think there's a bigger shift. And I think it's important, and it isn't. I see it too, and I do think it's more than just a few random people. There is something that has happened, and it isn't coming from the politicians.
On the left, it's not. On the right, it is. The right is locked into that social media shit. The left, the lawmakers at least, are not at all.
I do think there's a bigger shift, and I think it's important, as you pointed out, political violence in our country still is very, very rare. Mm-hmm. And so I feel like there's these two ideas you have to have in your mind at the same time. One being that we can't allow acts of violence by individuals who are united, regardless of ideology, by a willingness to do violence, right? That's the most important thing about a mass shooter, about the person that shot Charlie Kirk, the person that shot at Gabby Giffords, right? That they're willing to go to this extreme and do violence, and sometimes their rationales are cogent, sometimes their rationales are nonsense. It's the act of violence that unites them, and there's something rising, whether it's people willing to shoot up a school, people wanting to go out a blaze of glory, and we cannot arrange our society around that. We can't allow that to warp our politics too much because it is so rare in our society. But at the same time, like, it does seem to be like an emergent property of the amount of vitriol, hate, lack of empathy, cruelty on the internet and beyond. I think that Trump is both a cause of and a symptom of. And I struggle with how you think about those two things. But the comfort that people have, right, whether it's the shooting of the United Healthcare CEO or the killing of Charlie Kirk, that is morally wrong before you even get to whether it will encourage future violence. It said something really ugly about our politics and our culture, and I do think that is real.
Yeah.
So that's the thing I struggle with.
There's something else interesting.
Like, here's the thing that people don't understand. I used to complain about this all the time. Why can't I push shift on this computer to make this? Thank you. Is when you talk about things, you have like there is this threshold where when you describe something, and you can describe this thing really, 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 really hard, and at some point you get into a prescription. You might call this like an is or an ought. Okay, so one thing that drove me crazy about Jordan Peterson was that he would do this thing where he would say women in the workplace aren't getting along with men. Men don't know what the rules are. It's leading to a whole bunch of problems. It seems like it's only getting worse. We have no idea how we can solve any of these issues. And he'll stop right here. And then I think Kathy Newman did this a lot, where she would kind of ask him this question here. It's like, oh, so should women not be working anymore? And Jordan Peterson could always say, oh, I didn't say that. Oh, I didn't actually say that. I never said that. Oh, I never said that. Why? What? I never said that at all. I never said that. And he didn't technically, but he was playing like this game of descriptively edging you up until you would prescriptively blow your load. Like, he does this all the time. There's a certain amount of this that necessitates like this. There's a certain amount of this that will always like lead to this. And if you're intelligent in life, you understand that this is inevitable. One of the reasons why you tell your, you should never, ever, well, generally speaking, you shouldn't complain about your significant other to your friend group, because you don't usually tell them good things about your significant other because you're just not maybe having those conversations, and people really remember bad things. So when you complain about your significant other, oh, like he did this, like, oh, he called me a name, like, oh, we got into a fight, he ignored me, oh, we went to sleep last night, we didn't talk to each other. At some point, your friends are like, bro, you got to fucking leave this motherfucker. They're all going to be pushed over here, even though you're not necessarily thinking it. Like, this is just like the natural result of all of this descriptive edging. And when you look at something like Luigi Mangione, right? Okay, well, healthcare is in a state in the United States where we could give the maximum level of healthcare to every single person. The only reason we can't do it is because insurance companies exist to deny claims and deprive people of healthcare that is not only rightfully theirs, they already even paid for it. They get denied for no reason by merchants of death who head up these companies like United Healthcare. And innocent, poor people, and even middle-class people, are sentenced to death for no reason other than to line the pocketbooks of these yacht-sailing merchants of death. I don't understand how you think you could say all of this, and then it's like, somebody killed him? What? Like, yeah, that's, of course. If you're never going to look at any of this, then you don't really have a right to complain about any of this, in my opinion. This is why people want to do the genocide. This is why people want to do the genocide thing or the apartheid thing with Israel. Oh, it's a genocide. Oh, they're an apartheid state. Oh, it's a occupation. Oh, what's the third one? It's apartheid, genocide, and what's the other aside or whatever? Ethnic cleansing or whatever. When you do all of these things, it's obvious what the prescription should be, even if you never say it. Like, if you really do hold all these descriptions to be true, then you just shouldn't be surprised when this happens. Like I said, the same thing for January 6th, right? Like, if you really do believe in the big lie that Trump sold for, a year, well, then, of course, you should revolt and try to overthrow the government, because apparently the Democrats have already stolen the election from you. So...
Not at the moment, it won't, because we don't know what the rules are.
Do you think men and women can work in the workplace together?
We don't know.
Yes, I...
So it's annoying because, like, any normal person, like all of Jordan Peterson's fans hear this and like, oh yeah, women can't be in the workplace. But then if a left person ever confronts him, it's like, didn't you say that women shouldn't like work with men and that we shouldn't have that integration anymore? He'll rightfully say, I never said that, because he didn't, because he's just descriptively pushed you all the way to the border, but he himself hasn't taken the step over. It's just a very annoying way of, I don't know. It's just an annoying way of conducting yourself.
Culture, and I do think that is real.
Yeah.
So that's the thing I struggle with.
There's something else interesting. This is an obvious thought, but I just thought about it. When you think about Luigi, you think about the Butler shooter. We don't know his politics. And the guy from the Hilton. All these people.
Also, I don't even think, I don't care, because I would just as quickly label Luigi as like a far leftist shooter, because I hate far leftists. I don't even know. I think the Luigi guy is like a little bit schizo. I'm not sure how politically oriented that guy even is. I think he's like a little bit, I don't know how old he is. He might be getting into the age where that psychotic shit starts to emerge, but he didn't really seem much like he had like a super strong political foundation of stuff. His manifesto was expressly political. I would have to go link me it, I guess, if you want.
The Charlie Kirk shooter are young. And like, obviously there's the idea of the school shooter and the serial killer and the lone wolf killer out there. You tend to be white men, but all of these examples are people who grew up online. We grew up online, but like in middle school and high school, I just had AOL. Like, these people grew up with phones in their pockets. And so they have so many more touch points to dark places.
His manifesto was political, but not coherently so. Just because you're doing a thing that's like political doesn't mean that you are political, but I don't know how to explain that. This came up in in the one battle after another thing. Like, you can talk about politics, but you're not really, I don't know how to explain it. Luigi Manifesto. Is this the whole thing? Just this like long paragraph? Oh. To the feds, I'll keep this short because I do respect what you do for our country to save you a lengthy investigation. I state plainly that I wasn't working with anyone. This was a fairly trivial, some elementary social engineering, basic CAD, a lot of patience. The spiral notebook, if present, has some straggling notes and to-do lists that illuminate the gist of it. My tech is pretty locked down because I work in engineering, so probably not much info there. I do apologize for any strife or traumas, but it had to be done. Frankly, these parasites simply had it coming. A reminder, the US has the #1 most expensive healthcare system in the world, yet we rank roughly 42 in life expectancy. United is the indecipherable largest company in the US by market cap, behind only Apple, Google, Walmart. It has grown and grown, but has our life expectancy? No, the reality is these indecipherable have simply gotten too powerful, and they continue to abuse our country for immense profit because the American public has allowed them to get away with it. Obviously, the problem is more complex, but I do not have space, and frankly, I do not pretend to be the most qualified person to lay out the full argument, but many have illuminated the corruption and greed. And then he cites Rosenthal and Moore decades ago, and problems simply remain. It is not an issue of awareness at this point, but clearly power games at play. Evidently, I am the first to face it with such brutal honesty. Yeah, you could say the skews left, I guess, but it's not like, compared to like the fucking Unabomber, I feel like this is not like a massive like political manifesto, you know? There was didn't he write a note or didn't he write something in prison that he sent out too? I feel like I saw something more. He wrote to the PBD podcast. What did he write? Somebody link it.
Places on the internet, but in dark places. That's sort of what I'm talking about. It's that, like Jennifer Welch on the I've Had a podcast the other day was entertaining.
That didn't really sound schizo. No, this doesn't sound schizo at all, actually. I thought I saw something more weird. Maybe it was the prison note, but maybe it wasn't actually crazy. Maybe I'd have to, let me reread it and think about it. Oh, this. I think there was a handwritten version of this, right? This is the PDF scanned version, I think.
I'm thinking.
Fuck Reddit. Or maybe he did type it out. Last month on May 6th, I turned 27 years old. To mark the occasion, I took some time to reflect on 27 things I'm grateful for. My friends for being there when I needed it most. My family for blank. My personal life is none of your business. The many talented and generous individuals who, if not for my current predicament, I never would have crossed paths with. Letters I spent each day between the same four walls of my unit, where I received both holiday cards sent in December and birthday cards sent between March and May, creating a bizarre and disorienting Groundhog Day scenario where every day is both Christmas and my May 6th birthday. Nonetheless, I'm incredibly grateful. The monotony of my physical environment is offset by the variety and richness of the lives I experience through letters, multi-page life stories, retellings of workplace conversations, stream of consciousness journal entries, admissions of greatest fears, eager recaps of recent triumphs, mothers reliving senseless tragedies, soulful creations, generous offers, advice. The MDC mailroom, which has to date photocopied and processed thousands of letters sent to me from over 40 countries. Your efforts are appreciated by so many. Memes, as one of my wisest correspondents put it, laughter is louder than logic and makes a lot more sense. The countless books I've been sent. While I've never read the vast majority of them, I've loved facilitating this collective practice in Sundoku and have distributed these books to many grateful inmates. My favorites include Ayn Rand's Anthem, Patrick Bet-David's Your Next Five Moves, and Ray Bradbury's Fahrenheit 451. Independence media/creators, publications like The American Prospect, citizen documentaries like Jumi Kim, and citizen journalists, of which there are too many to name. My cellmate, Jay, who, despite spending half of every day inside a shared birdcage and being sentenced to a decade away from his 6 kids who he loves, tolerates the clutter of all my papers, shares his unique wisdom, and doesn't hesitate to humble me when I need it. He reads more of my books than I do and appreciates all the Calvin and Hobbes. The MDC staff and COs, who are nothing like what the Shawshank Redemption or the Stanford Prison Experiment had me to believe, while the occasional minor dissent arises, I found that they are people too and largely there to help. Chicken Thursdays and Sweet Baby Ray's BBQ sauce. Sorry, vegans, it's the realest food here, and I need my strength. Keyboard shortcuts. There is no print multiple option. MA, click, click, enter, XP, click, click, enter, repeat. The some 30,000 individuals around the globe who have come together to donate over $1 million to my legal fund, enabling me to retain a world-class defense team across 3 concurrent prosecutions. Karen Friedman Agnifilo. Need I say more? I have no idea who that is. The other members of my legal team who are also pretty great. Latinas for Mangione. Everyone who has donated to my commissary account, whose contributions have funded a tablet, songs, stamps, hygiene items. You can get a tablet in prison? What the fuck? BBQ sauce. Goya Sazon, or Sazon. Peanut butter and lots of tuna packets. The Bop Music Catalog. Luigi is currently listening to Television, The Drug of a Nation. By the disposable heroes of ... The trials that I've endured, which have, I hope, prepared me for anything that might lie ahead. My lucky long sleeve, Hearts, the creatives. The artist's task is to save the soul of mankind, and anything less is a dithering while Rome burns. Terence McKenna. The conservatives who fiercely conserve the aspects of our society that makes us great. The liberals who liberate us from the outdated aspects of our society that prevent us from being greater. Being born in America, she is haunted by her past. She is sick. She is plagued by inner turmoil. Such is her nature as a nation of individuals. She is young, in the midst of an adolescent identity crisis, but despite all her flaws, her frame is robust and her potential unmatched. Free speech, the basis of our way of life. When you tear out a man's tongue, you're not proving him a liar. You're only telling the world that you fear what he might say. George. And finally, blank. Okay, never mind. This, I guess, isn't really schizo. I don't really know how I would characterize his political beliefs, though. I don't know. Vaguely slopulist, I guess, maybe. But I don't know.
So recently I get a letter from Luigi Mangione. My assistant comes to me and says, you got a letter from Luigi Mangione. I said, which Luigi Mangione? He says, D. Luigi Mangione. I said, D. Luigi Mangione from the Metropolitan Detention Center? Yes. In Brooklyn? Yes. The same place that a lot of these guys, Nicolas Maduro's at right now, by the way, Ghislaine Maxwell, R. Kelly Diddy, some of these guys? Yes. The guy that got accused of killing Brian Thompson, the CEO of United Health? Yes. What's he writing me a letter for? I don't know. Okay. So what do? I open it up and I read through it. And by the way, to tell you how well it was written would be an understatement. This was written as if a kid went to Harvard or Yale.
He doesn't say what he wrote in this video? Okay, then I don't give a fuck. I don't know. He really doesn't say? It says right here that he shares a real letter sent from jail. You need a smoke machine like that?
Good writing.
If I had to guess, this is just a green screen.
So I sat on it and I said, what am I
Did you see the new motion today? No, it's probably nothing. There are no more good motions. What? Motion 2, seal per local rule. Responses 2, it's probably a motion for leave to file something under seal, like to attach an affidavit to something. Respectfully request leave of court to file a document under seal. Supplemental memorandum. Yeah, yes, that's it. The only big things that are left are their response to our motion for a summary judgment. I imagine it has to be a motion for, they have to file something for spoliation, is my guess. And that would be my guess on the only two big things left. It's going to be them responding to our MSJ and maybe them filing for spoliation and then our reply to the MSJ. Those are the only things left in this case. And then hopefully the judge, she said she'd rule by the end of this month or early next month.
tell this guy?
How long do they have to respond to the MSJ? I don't remember. I thought it was like 7 days or 5 days or something. It's supposed to be pretty soon, but...
These conspiracy theories about how Trump was, like, this was a false flag so that he could develop the ballroom. I'm not saying she's spreading hate speech, but, like, that's one of the ascendant podcasters on the left. Like, there aren't any real epistemological boundaries, I feel like, at this point. And, you know, you can be a liberal and listen to Jennifer Welch or this, or go on a Twitch stream or whatever. But all of those young people, like you said, I'm not being nostalgic for an old media time necessarily. I'm just like, I call myself a student of media history, but they don't know a time of like monoculture, Walter Cronkite, anything. There's no.
Why did you file for spoliation? Because I don't have I don't have a countersuit. I don't know what's the point. I'm not going to get. I mean, like their case, they don't have subject matter jurisdiction. They don't have anything for their case. So it's not. I don't even know. It's not like I'm even fighting anything right now. I'm boxing ghosts.
Necessarily, I'm just like, I call myself a student of media history, but they don't know a time of like monoculture, Walter Cronkite, anything. There's no shared facts, and like all, you know, it just
the conspiracy
that depresses me.
Yeah, like the conspiracy theory embrace that we see across the board. I do think there's something about.
Some people think it's just fun, by the way. Like I have friends who are like conspiracy theories are fun.
Yeah, there's something about the way in which the internet encourages you that we're all being encouraged to embrace easy and quick comfort across our lives. And social media does that, right? Like you don't have to have any discipline of attention whatsoever. You can just get a jolt of something fun, something funny, something outrageous, whatever. Get a quick like hit of an endorphin or an emotion. You don't have to leave the house to see a movie. You can just stay in bed, whatever. You can have food come to your house. Like we're easy to satisfy, uncomfortable with any kind of discomfort. And when there's something horrible that happens, like the killing of Charlie Kirk, in which you, I think, morally are called to denounce the killing of someone you found reprehensible, that tiny bit of friction, that tiny bit of discomfort, there's a whole algorithm that's telling you don't have to feel that anymore. And the same thing with someone trying to assassinate Donald.
A little bit, but also like, sorry, it's that feeling again of having to say something so painfully fucking obvious. Okay. The manager comes into your shift and you're a supervisor. The manager is not going to tell your employees what they need to do. And if all of your employees are fucking around, the manager is not going to look at all the employees and think all the employees are fucking around. The manager is going to think the supervisor's fucking around. Okay. Every environment that you're in, you could be talking about teachers in classrooms or parents and kids. You could be talking about presidents and countries or managers and staff or CEOs and their businesses. Like, there's going to be a type of energy. There's going to be a type of engagement, attitude, culture that's set from the top down. Not to say that nothing beneath can ever deviate, but if the president of the United States, if the tone from the top that is radiating out to every single part of the Republican apparatus, if that tone is LOL Mueller died, LOL Rob Schneider died of TDS, LOL we should execute the 6 congressmen, LOL like, you know, shithole countries that are made of dirt, LOL we should denaturalize, Ilhan Omar, LOL she fucked and married her brother, LOL, like, what the fuck do you expect? Like, I can't take anything seriously. I can't take criticism to anybody seriously in that environment. And there's no way for me to communicate that without, you know, retards like Piers just like, oi, mate, do you disavow? Oi, do you disavow, mate? Oi, do you disavow? Like, who the fuck cares? Who gives a fuck? Nobody cares. It doesn't matter. It truly doesn't matter. It doesn't fucking matter who gives a fuck. And it doesn't matter who disavows or says anything. If that's the tone from the top down, then all is lost.
Trump because of views you might agree with. Wouldn't it be nice if there were a way you didn't have to sit with that for even a moment? Well, guess what there is? Because it turns out maybe it was staged. And we live in a crazy world in which there were legitimate news stories that in Hungary, Trump's ally, there was a plan to stage an assassination attempt to help Viktor Orban in the final days of the election. That is real reporting about something real that very well could have happened in the world.
There's also a conspiracy theory that Trump wouldn't leave office if he lost.
Of course, of course. And there was a conspiracy theory that
No, that's not the same type of conspiracy theory because Donald Trump himself has said that. Donald Trump himself has floated that idea. We just watched 3, I think, were they federal judges? Is that what that hearing was for a Senate confirmation hearing? That none of them would say that Trump couldn't be president a third time. Trump has made hats that say Trump 2028 or whatever, that he's giving out to other political people. Like, how can you call that a conspiracy theory the same way there's 9/11 conspiracy theories? It's not the same thing. That's not the same thing.
To help Viktor Orban in the final days of the election. That is real reporting about something real that very well could have happened in the world.
There's also a conspiracy theory that Trump wouldn't leave.
As we say in Dutch, a fish rots from the head down. Why would you say something in Dutch in English? Don't post fake shit in my chat.
Election. That is real reporting about something real that very well could have happened in the world.
There's also a conspiracy theory that Trump wouldn't leave office if he lost.
Of course, of course. And there was a conspiracy theory that a powerful cabal of abusers were protecting Jeffrey Epstein. Like a lot of people have come to believe that conspiracy theories had some merit. And the truth is, the great conspiracy theories always do begin with a kernel of.
Okay, but like, why do people think that? Why do people think that? Where do these ideas come from for the Epstein stuff?
The Joe Rogan Experience.
Let's just get to it because I know it's on people's minds.
No, fuck. I mean, fuck. I need to find this. Hold on. Actually, I do need to find this.
The Epstein thing, I got a lot to talk. This Epstein thing really it's like a tick burrowing under my skin. I get a call.
Let's go.
Yeah, this is going to get hairy. You guys ready?
Yes.
This guy was the deputy director of the FBI with Kash Patel, okay? Second in charge, FBI with Kash Patel was. Now is a podcaster again, okay? Second in charge of the U.S. Federal Bureau of Investigation, FBI, okay? After this, that's what he became, okay? What was he saying before then?
More school. Yes. This is like live YouTube. You ready for this? I don't know if you guys are ready. I get a call, I don't know, about 4 years ago. It's from, let's say, a friend. Prior line of work thing, right? Guy says, listen, and this guy who calls me is an unimpeachable source. This guy's not like some ham and egg or tomato can guy throwing out some theory about a UFO he saw 72 years ago, whatever. This is like a legit, no-nonsense guy. Guy you trust with your, wife, kid, and car, right? He says, I got sent on a temporary assignment once. And on that assignment, I got sent out with on the WCD detail, William Clinton detail. And I knew this guy well. And he says, Dan, I got to share this with someone. He's like, I go on a plane, and Bill, Clinton gets on the plane with this guy, and it turns out later the guy's Epstein. Now, this guy I'm talking to, this source, he don't know who Jeffrey Epstein is. He's just getting on the plane doing the thing, the whole, protection gig, right? He says, I get on the plane, and there's these girls who are obviously not of age who are on this plane. They're clearly young. These are not women. These are girls. And he says, I see Clinton, disappear into the back, he goes, I don't know what happened. I'm not saying what happened because all I know is he disappeared and these girls were back there or whatever. And he said they land at the next stop, wherever it was. And he goes up to the boss on the detail and he says, I ain't getting back on this plane. Because he's a temp. He's not used to like whatever Clinton was up to with the whole shenanigans thing. And this guy's clear as the driven snowman. He don't want to mess around with this. He says, whatever just happened back there, like, I don't want any piece of it. They sent him home. They sent that guy home, and he was never tempted to that detail again. Now, remember, all those...
By the way, I don't think Bill Clinton was ever even in the same plane, ever, as Epstein. There were 4 trips, I believe, that he took, but I don't think he was ever on a plane with Epstein. I don't think that ever came out anywhere. I just Googled this. Was Clinton and Epstein ever on a plane together? Yes, former President Bill Clinton flew on Jeffrey Epstein's private plane multiple times, but I don't believe they were ever even on a flight together, or at least I haven't seen that. Some people will say 26 separate flights, but the reason is because it was 4 trips, and then every layover they counted as a different flight or whatever. Somebody in chat said it was for the Clinton Foundation. Maybe they did. Maybe there was a flight together. Wait. Somebody said last paragraph. Oh, wait. While flight logs placed Clinton on the plane with Epstein, they did not show that Clinton was ever on a flight to Epstein's private island, Little St. James. Okay, so he was on at least one flight with Epstein, I guess. Okay, there you go.
Blackberries on that detail. Here's where the story gets super weird. The guy tells me, months or a couple weeks later, when you lose property in the Secret Service, an email goes out, it'll say like, hey, I lost his phone, and it gets logged into NCIC or whatever it is, and everybody knows. So basically, if you find this guy's gun, God forbid, or his phone, it's now effectively stolen property, right? All of a sudden, all the Blackberries on that...
That's not what that sentence said. Wait, what? Hold on, let me read. That is what they said. While flight logs placed Clinton on the plane with Epstein. That is what this sentence says. What do you mean that's not what the sentence says? Destiny, I'm retarded. He nuked himself. Okay, good job.
This morning, former President Bill Clinton releasing this new video after...
Where was there one flight, or where was their flight to? Has that ever been released? I feel like if they have the flight logs and they've seen where he traveled, if they know the 26 legs, I feel like they should know which flight it was, but okay, ignore that point.
Detail. For the agents start showing up like, oh, this guy lost his BlackBerry. Holy shit. Wow, that's so crazy. How'd that happen? I'm like, no. He says, yeah.
Wait, Bongino's source was unimpeachable. Same source broke the kitty litter boxes and classroom story. Wait, that didn't come from Bongino on Joe Rogan's show, did it? He wasn't the guy who originated that, was he?
All the Blackberries on that detail. For the agents start showing up like, oh, this guy lost his BlackBerry. Holy shit. Wow, that's so crazy. How'd that happen? I'm like, no. He says, yes. He says it was the craziest thing. Like, oh, look, Agent Joey Bag of Donuts, missing BlackBerry. This is around the whole time, like the Clinton thing's going on. So fast forward this story, right? He tells me that. About a year and a half after that, I'm in a green room at Fox, and I'm not going to say who because they didn't give me permission to share it, but, well, the story, but not who they are. Says, Epstein's an intelligence asset for people in the Middle East, right? I'm like, no, I didn't know that. I'm like, you sure of that? The person, let's say, is like, I'm absolutely sure of that he's either a witting or unwitting asset, intelligence asset, meaning his plane and that island, the cameras, there's a big assumption out there that these videotapes were exclusively in the custody of Epstein. That's a huge mistake. The reason they wanted this story to go away is because there's an assumption like, oh yeah, Epstein had him. No, he wasn't the only one who had him, according to this source. These assets, that's why this blackmail story makes so much sense. Which Middle Eastern countries they are, I don't know. But this person, who's a very, very good reporter, I mean, aces, right? Swore Epstein was either a witting or unwitting intelligence asset, and they may have had his plane wired up, and they're the ones who have all this stuff. So the point is, to sum it up, how do you know some of these countries aren't going to some of these power players who aren't making decisions? Hey, you wouldn't want this video out there, right? How do you know?
100%.
I mean,
let's get personal with Mr. Gates, though. If this is a story of an adult man having adult relations with an adult female outside of his marriage, is it the biggest deal in the world that can be made public? You know what I mean? What I'm interested in is the underage stuff, the creepos, that evidence coming out. I'm worried that they're doing this with the Bill Gates thing as like red meat, like, oh, look, oh, yeah. And it's like, it's not a criminal issue. It's a personal scandal. It's like, oh, wow, Bill Gates looks bad. But what about the Maxwell stuff? What about the actual client list? I don't think we should be satisfied by what we're hearing, and we should obviously want more. I think you're totally right. I think that...
So this was Bongino on a podcast before going into the FBI. And then, do you guys remember... The only thing I can think of that this reminds me of is when Hassan had to talk to Cenk about the 9/11 comments, and it was just like a scolding moment. Do you remember when, it was a mainstream media interview. when these two had to answer questions about, was it this?
Right-wing political commentator Mindy Robinson goes, people don't believe it. Well,
Is that Jean or Janine Pirro? Oh, let's say this. No. Wait. No, fuck, it's the other woman, right? Fuck, what's her fucking name? Baratorm. Why the fuck do these guys all have the weirdest fucking names? Bardaroma? Why do I not have the original whatever. We can watch the short.
You said
but
Jeffrey Epstein.
So we just heard how, remember, unimpeachable source, Bongino said. And then after they're in office,
Committed suicide. People don't believe it.
Well, I mean, listen, they have a right to their opinion, but as someone who has worked as a public defender, as a prosecutor, who's been in that prison system, who's been in the Metropolitan Detention Center, who's been in segregated housing, you know a suicide when you see one, and that's what that was.
He killed himself. You want me to? I've seen the whole file. He killed himself.
like, how are people not going to believe in conspiracies? Fuck, this was the interview.
You said
How are
Jeffrey
people?
Epstein.
You can't act like random liberal says retarded shit on Twitter, and some people believe it. To the director of the FBI and the co-director of the FBI, who prior to being in the government were saying they had unimpeachable sources linking Epstein to Clinton and all these other things, to now saying
Committed suicide. People don't believe it.
Well, I mean, listen, they have a right to their opinion, but as someone who has worked as a public defender, as a prosecutor, who's been in that prison system, who's been in the Metropolitan Detention Center, who's been in segregated housing, you know a suicide when you see one, and that's what that was.
These guys.
He killed himself. You want me to? I've seen the whole file. He killed himself.
Epstein, right?
He had to go on to Joe Rogan and walk it all back. Like, yeah, I'm even when they're not trying, and this guy's not a both sideser, whoever is opposite this guy, he's not a both sideser. I can tell he's not trying to be a both sideser, but even he's been a little bit mind fucked by the algorithm. Even he's been a little bit algorithm mind fucked. You see, there's a hugely disproportionate source of misinformation here, right?
Orban in the final days of the election. That is real reporting about something real that very well could have happened in the world.
There's also a conspiracy theory that Trump wouldn't leave office if he lost.
Of course, of course. And there was a conspiracy theory that a powerful cabal of abusers were protecting Jeffrey Epstein. Like a lot of people have come to believe that conspiracy theories had some merit. And the truth is, the great conspiracy theories always do begin.
Like, remember, sorry.
So in the last few minutes, we've heard from Democrats blaming Republicans, Republicans blaming Democrats, but also President Donald Trump. He's been taunting Democrats on social media. What can you tell us?
Like, bruh. LOL conspiracy theory. LOL conspiracy theory. LOL conspiracy theory. Like, is it really that far-fetched to believe that the guy who had an entire conspiracy, or like 3 concurrently running conspiracies to overturn the election in 2020, would also try to run again in 2028? Is that really that hard to believe? Is that impossible to believe? Like, what? That's like the most believable thing. I didn't even call that a conspiracy. That's the most believable thing ever.
About maybe photos of their White House meeting where you can see Mr. Trump talking about this, and also what we're seeing there on the screen, Trump 2028 hats on his desk. What are you hearing about that?
Yeah, you're seeing that picture from the big meeting that happened here earlier in the week.
With a kernel of truth in them, or a lot of the great ones do. Like, so I understand like where that impulse comes from, and I understand how the internet feeds it.
Yeah.
That's not an internet. That was fed by cabinet line officials, deputy director of the FBI, and Donald Trump, the president of the United States. They're not They're not just from Twitter. They're not just random Twitter posts.
I think that it is incumbent upon Democratic politicians to try so hard to keep the what was Ernie in the trash can, like whatever, just like push it down. Like Mark Kelly came out with the
Oscar was the Grinch,
Oscar,
right?
Ernie?
Ernie's or Bert and Ernie, they're just a happy gay
Oscar
couple.
was the Grouch.
Yeah,
Sorry, no offense to happy gay.
No.
Mark Kelly put out. I mean, who cares what Mark Kelly thinks? But like a Substack.
I care.
Sure, I care
what Mark Kelly thinks.
I care, and I think you said the other day on this podcast, referencing Chris Murphy talking after the United Healthcare murder.
Wait, hold on.
What was Ernie in the trash can? Like whatever, just like push it down. Like Mark Kelly came out with the.
Oscar was the Grinch,
Oscar,
right?
Ernie's
or Bert and Ernie, they're just a happy gay couple.
Yeah, sorry, no offense to happy gay.
No.
Mark Kelly put out. I mean, who cares what Mark Kelly thinks? But like a Substack.
I care.
Sure, I care.
I care what Mark Kelly thinks.
I care, and I think you said the other day on this podcast, referencing Chris Murphy talking after the United Healthcare murder. I forget the anecdote. Why did this come up? I think like Nate Silver wrote about it, that he sort of said like, I acknowledged why people like hate insurance companies. What did Chris
I was referencing people who I was referencing that someone, I think like a prominent conservative had said that the shooter at the White House Correspondents' Dinner, his rhetoric is indistinguishable from that of Chris Murphy, as if that's an indictment of Chris Murphy.
Got it.
That's what I was referring to, I believe.
I think, I don't want to like miscast what Chris Murphy said. He's probably listening. But again, the press certainly has less power than we used to. And you know, maybe wrongly, the press was the arbiter of common decency for many decades in this country. But you know, politicians are akin to where people get a lot of news now. Influencers, creators, they're famous people on the internet. That's who they are. And they have a responsibility to call it out when it happens. It's just really hard. Like, again, this is in a leaderless party. No one, like, attention matters, getting attention matters. This is one of my beats. Like, Ro Khanna can call it out. Chuck Schumer can call it out. Alyssa Slotkin can call it out. But, you know, which random normie in Ohio is listening to any of those people?
Well, look, I think sometimes in our politics, we treat Democrats like the protagonists with agency, and Republicans are the villains who will do what villains do. I sometimes think we do the same thing with people on the internet now, that, of course, Democratic politicians are going to say the same thing, but there's nothing we can do about the influencers. But influencers have responsibility. And
Not on the right, though. That's only on the left, by the way. Not on the right. You better believe their influencers fucking fall in line, except for the ones that are literally rogue agents that are now enemies of the party, like Candace Owens and Nick Fuentes and Tucker Carlson.
Part of this is, I think,
there are some insane YouTube tiles out there, man. There's some
for sure.
ones.
But I don't know. I think sometimes we have to, if the people who are going to be helping to shape what people view as the kind of bounds of appropriate political discourse, if that's not going to be coming from politicians or mainstream media, if it's going to be coming from people on the internet, then that comes with responsibility. You know, like in 2024, I think a lot of people felt like you had people in the kind of manosphere, the kind of independent, kind of right-adjacent podcast world embracing their power, but not their responsibility, right? Their power to influence, their power to get big people on, their power to reach tens of millions of people, but not their responsibility to...
They're just an unfrozen caveman lawyer. They don't know what's
right, yeah. I'm just a big chicken, you know? I'm just a big chicken. But...
you know what's funny about that? I have some data on this week. The AP came out with a poll about media habits, and it's a really interesting poll because they also poll teenagers. But all the elite sort of things that we do as
minors,
former DCers and political junkies, listen to podcasts, subscribe to newsletters, I'm trying to think of some other ones. Subscribe to news. Vast majorities of Americans don't do those things. They really don't. And by the way, podcasts are a little different because they'll also watch it on YouTube or whatever. But the one thing that has really popped is influencers and creators. For a long time in these polls, could be Pew, could be AP, that asked people how they get their news. Social media was just sort of an umbrella term. That could be Snap, it could be YouTube, it could be Meta, whatever.
Clips of mainstream content, by the way, as well.
Totally. But they actually asked specifically about influencers and creators. And near majorities of Americans say they get news from influencers and creators now. And that's a huge shift in just a few years. And so that gets to what you're saying about responsibility.
A little bit, kind of, but not really, but kind of, but not really. Like, it is a huge shift, but we had an issue in the past where when people would say they get their news from like news sources like Fox and everything, you know what I bet? I would bet this. I'm going to make a risky gamble right now. Lord God, if you're alive in heaven, I want you to crush my balls if I'm wrong on this. Americans 30 years ago never got the majority of their news from news sources, even when they said it came from news sources. They still got the majority. I'm just kidding. They still got the majority of their news from pundits on those news sources. So Americans might say, "Oh no, I get the majority of my news from mainstream media like Fox News." No, you don't. You get it from the pundits on Fox News, which is different. You're listening to Sean Hannity. You're listening to Jeanine Pirro, to whatever Marichua, the fucking lady, and Tucker Carlson, and these guys. These are the people, or Bill O'Reilly. These are the people you're listening to. These are not reporters. They're pundits. This is what you're getting the majority of your news from. You think it's mainstream media because they're pundits on mainstream media stations, but it's not really mainstream media reporting. That's not really what's happening, you know?
The influencers and creators are now on par with, according to this poll, local TV news, radio, terrestrial radio still matters, search engines still matter, way more than like AI, and like television. And so like that's just really, really taken off. And I agree with you. And you've seen that with Theo Vaughn and Andrew Schultz after the election when, you know, they're deporting.
I mean, you can say that most leftist podcasts fall in line, except some rogue agents too, can't you? For center left podcast, absolutely not. Or for center, no, even the center left doesn't. Far left definitely doesn't. The far left is openly hostile to the Democratic Party constantly. And then the center left people are all like constantly fucking themselves to seem like they're based and centrist or whatever.
I agree with you. And you've seen that with Theo Vaughn and Andrew Schultz after the election when, you know, they're deporting, rounding up and deporting people and separating mothers from their children or whatever. Doge. I didn't vote for this because I was just playing the humble, unfrozen caveman lawyer. But they have to, I think they're becoming more responsible, actually, at least in terms of acknowledging their power. These people were at the inauguration for the President of the United States.
I do think that we're due for a similar turn on the left of people with big platforms who reach a big audience, viewing a responsibility. And like, you know, we're here and we try to have honest conversations, but part of I think part of what being responsible is you try to be honest, critical where you think it's helpful, critical maybe where you think it's unhelpful, but needs to be said at times, but view what you're trying to do as as more than just saying what you happen to think or feel in that moment, right? Like that's what I think the difference is between what Obama did in that press conference you're talking about and what a lot of members of Congress do every time a camera comes in front of their faces, which is just take a moment and say, you know what, I'm going to take a beat and make sure that I'm sharing good information, or like interrogating a bias for one moment, or knowing that even if I feel something in the moment that I believe is true, I know that I have a responsibility to my audience to not become a tool of the right.
Yeah. I also think I really want to pay you guys a sincere compliment, and I'm friends with you. We live in the same city. We socialize. I get that. I still listen to this podcast despite knowing how personally annoying each and every one of you is, because you are willing to interrogate collective assumptions on the left. You are willing to tangle with those ideas. We saw it this week with the Ken Martin interview, but you guys frequently will have people on. And I think this a lot about a variety of left-leaning media. You don't just tell people what they want to hear. You tell people sometimes, maybe not as much as other news organizations, what they need to hear. And I think that's really important, because I do think that maybe this is the Obama, example, but like wrestling with ideas is like really good. It's really good and healthy, and there's just such blind partisanship now. And this is where I will say on both sides that, the battle for ideas is hard. Well, it's hard to inhabit, not the middle, but it's hard to present nuance to people. That's why I wrote 10 paragraphs in that freaking Puck article before I could get to the point, because I had to say over and over again, Trump inspired January 6th. Trump inspired mail bombers. The Trump Republican Party welcomed Nazis and liars and mainstreamed this poison.
Illuminator, thank you for the 5 unit subs.
But, social media has taken it to another level, and other people are getting yanked into it.
I think what we're talking about, and that's very nice of you to say, it is not my experience that there's a lot of blind partisanship on the left. My view of where we're at right now is actually...
blind negative partisanship.
Blind negative, that's for sure. No, I agree with that. But what I was going to say only is I think like what we're circling, which I think relates to the conspiracy theories, the willingness to celebrate or kind of tolerate or kind of even just sort of minimize political violence, like it's forbearance, which is just the idea of restraint and being like kind of willing to lose and willing to... take a shot to your ego at times in politics.
This is why us old millennials are the best generation.
We are. You know what? We are the best generation.
We are the best generation because
we were vaccinated against Republicans by George W. Bush. Continue.
We had debates in our dorms. At Georgetown we had something called Red Square, which is a free speech zone. I know that sounds anathema now, but like you could have debates and interrogate things. You didn't have social media poisoning it. I don't know. Maybe that's an elite view, but
baby boomers went to the right. Gen X is the last redoubt of Donald Trump now.
Well, boomers, by the way, boomers are. I wrote about this last year. Boomers are drifted to the left because boomers now were hippies. Boomers are our parents, so they still hold on to some pluralistic values. Gen X is the bad one because they were Alex P. Keaton. Like the thing that happens is your politics in your 20s. Like that's what it generally is later in life, and so the Gen X folks. Put aside all the rock music and pop culture. Like those are the Alex P. Keaton.
The Gen X has really kind of moved to the right, but then also some of the Gen Z has moved a bit to the right, and millennials are actually not moving to the right at the same degree over time as previous generations have. The millennials are holding out. Greatest generation. All right.
Hear that, Brokaw?
True.
Yeah. What happened to him? All right. Before we go.
Wait, is this guy a millennial? Hold on. I forget the ages of everybody now. Hold on. What's the name of the two guys on Pod Save America? Pod Save America hosts. John Lovett. That's Lovett, right? John Lovett age. He better be at least 45. 43. Fuck! Hold on. How old is the oldest millennial? Is 45. Fuck! He barely counts.
Break. I want to thank everybody who has become a friend of the pod. Subscribe.
Points in the most recent. I think Emerson had him up 33.
Go to helixsleep.com/crooked for 27% off site-wide. That's helixsleep.com/crooked for 27% off site-wide. This offer is exclusive to our listeners. Make sure you enter our show name after checkout.
In regards to what you said about news watching, that they watch pundits, can we infer from that position that the political environment was already cultish before Trump or something else? The right wing has been pushing like cultish politics for a long time, but the social media algorithms have created a different world, unifying like the government on the right with the media and alternative media figures on the right, with the fabricated reality that everybody on the right now inhabits. That's a new thing. The internet has just ramped it all up to an 11.
So they know we sent you. helixsleep.com/crooked.
All right, let's hit some more topics. Plattner, Janet Mills out. Politico reported yesterday on calls from Democrats for Schumer to drop his involvement in the Iowa and Michigan primaries. What was your reaction to the Mills news and the general state of play in these primaries?
Surprised, but not surprised. I think Mills got in late. Plattner got in last August, September. Went super viral, raised a lot of money. Great vibes for the moment nationally for Democrats. Raging against the establishment. I am more looking forward than thinking about the surprise because he was up 33, 40 points in the most recent. I think Emerson had him up 33 at the end of April. This is a jump ball race. Like it's going to be very hard. And Graham Plattner does have.
As a fellow millennial from 99, how old is the youngest millennial? Excuse me. You're zooming, motherfucker. leaf cutter ant fuck. You're zooming hard. Get out of here.
Have baggage. And it's not even the Totenkopf tattoo or whatever. It's the Reddit post. I think we saw an article in the Free Beacon today, which is an oppo dump for Republicans, showing that Plattner, paid for his house with a loan from his wealthy father, not the VA, like he said. I just think there's lots of stuff there. And by the way, all this is to say, he can
We'll watch the Taylor Lorenz stuff in a bit. Hold on.
still win. Trump's at like 33, 34% approval. I think Maine is tougher than certain states, and here's why. And again, he can win. A lot of times you win with a pure contrast. And she's unpopular, Susan Collins. I think her own faves are like 57%. They got to win there. They got to win Alaska. They got to win Ohio and Iowa and all these places. Maine is the oldest electorate in the country. So it's also not very partisan. You've got a third of the state is independent, John. So, that helps someone like Plattner, I think. Like, I'm not from the system. That could appeal. You've got that Maine 2nd Congressional District, which was represented by Jared Golden for a while.
Who
He
is,
was a moderate.
I don't know anything about this history. Which seat, is he winning? He's going to win this election, right? Like, there's no chance that he would lose in fucking Maine to the Conservative, right? I have no idea what the polling is or anything. The general is dicey? Well. Oh, Collins has been there since 97. God damn! Suzanne Collins is a pretty strong candidate who beats polling. She beat the Democrat in 2020 by like 10 points, despite polling 10 points behind.
Differently. Like, Plattner's a lib. Golden was a moderate. Both have tattoos. But he won in Maine.
Sorry. Sorry. I tried to maximize my Chrome. Hold on. My processor's catching up. My bad. Oh, are we okay? Okay. Sorry.
Maine 2, which is a district Trump has won in the last 2 presidential elections by being just purebred moderate, Jared Golden. So, putting on Reddit that black people don't tip, that women shouldn't get so drunk that they get sexually assaulted. Honestly, I loved this episode that I forget which content it was from Crooked Media, but Pfeiffer and Alex Wagner did a piece on this a couple weeks ago. And it was really interesting listening to Alex. And I thought she was very sharp because I think a lot of the initial commentary supporting Plattner when jumping the race was coming from men. Mm-hmm. And when these posts came out, not that Alex Wagner wouldn't vote for Graham Plattner versus Susan Collins, but I think women might be a little squeamish about this. About him in a race against a woman that has successfully won over and over and over again. Also brought some reporting to the show. I learned from some Republican pollsters that they had 12 to 13% of past Susan Collins voters going for Janet Mills in this election. So that plays to what Schumer was probably thinking about. Like, this is an independent, older state, and we need someone safe to run against someone who's been reliably reelected. So Plattner's got some work to do, I think, to reassure. He's a young millennial with tattoos, a history of inflammatory Reddit posts. Clearly, I think Republicans are sitting on more.
Does uptime even matter anymore for computers? This is 19 days, right? Does it actually fucking matter?
Or stuff that's a date, and we need someone safe to run against someone who's been reliably reelected. So Plattner's got some work to do, I think, to reassure. He's a young millennial with tattoos, a history of inflammatory Reddit posts. Clearly, I think Republicans are sitting on more stuff. That's why I brought up the Free Beacon example. And he's got to convince voters in a state. It's like an old state, and it's going to be tough for him. But in this environment, Trump's approval ratings are absolute dog shit. That's why we're talking about Alaska. That's why we're talking about Maine. That's why we're talking about even Ohio and Iowa.
We're in the home stretch here of the California governor's race. The 2 highest vote getters will move on to the general. Post Swalwell, we've seen polls that show Becerra rising. CBS poll this week had Steve Hilton leading with 16, then Steyer at 15, Becerra at 13. Other polls have Becerra higher. Where's your head at on this race right now?
I think someone smartly framed it this way to me. And look, nationally, you might not care about a governor's race. California matters. Like Gavin Newsom will set a tailpipe emission regulation, and the rest of the country will follow. That's what California is. So yes, these candidates are underwhelming. Someone compared it to the 2020 presidential primary, where you've got not just Tom Steyer once again spending a lot of money, but you've got all these candidates who fail to catch fire. They pop in certain moments and fade. Javier Becerra is just sort of emerging. The last 4 polls, 2 independent, I think, and 2 sort of partisan, have showed him climbing. And having clear momentum. Steyer and Katie Porter are having a very hard time connecting with high information voters. Their negatives are very high. For all the money that Tom Steyer is spending, they kind of are hitting a ceiling. Becerra has kind of come from behind to go to the front. I didn't quite get it either. It kind of came out of nowhere organically. Hasn't spent a lot of money on television.
I believe he spent the money he has. I think he spent.
Yeah, he went up on TV like three or 4 weeks ago
at a key moment when Swalwell had dropped. Well, I think as Swalwell was dropping, before Swalwell dropped, he's up on the air.
Yes.
And so he's up on the air at a moment where all of a sudden there's all these Swalwell voters saying, "Oops."
Yes. And Javier Becerra is a boring person. Javier Becerra, I talked to someone in the Biden administration about this the other day, kind of aloof as HHS secretary, not incompetent, but just sort of like, he's not lighting the world on fire, okay? But he does have two things going for him right now in this governor's race, but the primary is in June. There's a lot of confusion among voters. People don't like the choices, and they're just kind of falling back on him, which is sort of similar to the Biden experience in 2020, right? You can win the primary at 23% of the vote, 25% of the vote. I'm not saying it's totally the same. And he's Latino. I mean, a third of the state is Latino. And I think the first part of that spot that went on TV about a month ago, it wasn't like Prop 50. It wasn't like Adam Schiff versus Katie Porter, like, we got to stop Donald Trump. It wasn't like Swalwell. It was, my parents were immigrants. And it leads with bio, and then it gets into, working class, affordability issues, healthcare, prescription drugs. And so for all of the, forgive my term, lib slop that you see in some of these TV ads and campaigns, like just raging against Trump and trying to go after the hardcore, college-educated, white MSNBC viewer voter, he reaches a different kind of voter than just that. And that's the thing, like Porter, Steyer, Swalwell, there was no data suggesting they had any numbers of people of color in this state. And so Becerra is just emerging as like a safe choice right now. Steyer's going after him already. He's not a great debater. There's 2 debates coming up this coming week, I think CNN and NBC. So we'll see if he can make it all the way to June. But he is the one with momentum right now, but it's sort of like boring momentum. I don't know the word for it.
Yeah, no.
Steyer's the best choice. No, I haven't followed that race too much. I would say Steyer, though, is probably a really bad choice because he was on Hassan's stream. Woo, yeah!
Watch the last debate.
I don't know, actually.
There was another debate this week.
It's terrible.
The first debate, and there was a moment where they were all asked if they would support a per mile tax for electric vehicles because California has a very high gas tax. I think it's like 60 or some odd cents a gallon, maybe a little more now. So there's this idea that, well, if we switch to electric vehicles, then no one's going to be paying for the roads, even though California has the worst roads in the country, and we pay the highest gas tax in the country. And so the question was, would you support a per mile tax for electric vehicles? It got to Becerra, and Becerra said, well, it's definitely something we ought to perhaps take a look at. If that's something the voters are interested in, then I could get behind it. And then you go to, I think it was one of the Republicans, and they're like, you're going to make everybody log all their miles? Hell fucking no. And I was like, that makes it, like, there's the passion on that stage. I talked to Katie Porter about this in my conversation with her, that California is in an emergency.
Yes.
We are losing people. We are losing our industries. And the only people up there that seem to have fire about it.
Is that true? Is California like losing their industries? I know some people have moved out. It's always hard to tell, though. Like sometimes when people talk about politics or economics or whatever, you'll have like it feels like you run into like, can I do with? Whatever. It'll be like, this is this city, and then like, this is this city, and people will be like, it's over. It's fucked. We're losing everything. It's completely fucked. It's completely fucked. It's gone. These guys are taking over. Austin, San Francisco, on the decline. It's gone. Austin, big ups. Huge ups. But I don't know. Sometimes it feels like people blow it out of proportion, but who is leaving California and who's moving in? Over the past 25 years, California, what is the date on this article? January 21st, 2026. Are you watching the Taylor Lorenz bit? I want to watch Taylor Lorenz on Live and Learn, but every time you guys ask, I have to push it back by another minute. So we're like 12 minutes away from it. So I don't know. We'll see if we get to it or not. Over the past 25 years, California has had its slowest rate of population growth ever recorded. The primary driver of this slowdown has been California residents moving to other states, a trend that remains near record levels, despite having abated somewhat since the pandemic. It is a remarkable turnaround. For California, once the epicenter of population growth in the United States, the affordability crisis, especially housing costs, has played a key role, with lower income households much more likely to leave the state than higher income households. Much has been made of the California exodus to other states, and rightly so. With migration over the decades has the power to reshape the state. From 2010 to 2024, the year of the latest data, almost 10 million people moved from California to other states. Damn. While just over 7 million people moved to California from other parts of the country. Okay, damn. According to the American Community Survey, in fact, according to the Department of Finance estimates, the state has lost residents to other states every year since 2001. Is there a way, can I see, is the reapportionment of the House is every 10 years when we do the census, right? What if like the historical numbers for the representatives of California been? Will the Google AI tell me? How many representatives has California had in the U.S. Congress over the past 100 years? Oh, I don't even know. Wait, hold on. No, certainly before that. When did California become a state? Way before that, right? 1850, yeah, okay. Just making sure. Over the last 100 years. Actually, wait. What was the last state added? Was it like Alaska or Hawaii? What was the last state added to USA? Hawaii. In 1959. It's kind of crazy if you think about it. Donald Trump and Joe Biden, when they were born, they were like 15 years old when they got to see the 50th state and the 49th state added to the... They lived in a time where there were 48 stars on the flag. That's kind of crazy if you think about it, right? Sheesh! Okay, 52, 53, 52, 45, 43, 38. Okay. We lost a seat. What the fuck? Where the fuck are the illegals at? God damn it! Net interstate migration, 2000. Okay. And then we see them leaving. During the height of the pandemic, the flows out of the state became so large that almost every demographic and socioeconomic group experienced net losses. For example, California used to gain college grads, even as it lost less educated adults, but in the last few years, the state has started losing college grads as well. Less than a bachelor's degree or more. Higher income adults are less likely to leave the state. Not by too much, though. From 2011 to 2020 for sure, but... Housing has become the dominant reason cited for leaving California. Oh, hold on. When did... I wonder if it happened in 2021. No, fuck. COVID probably fucked with so much shit that it's probably hard to guess. When did California allow ADUs, houses? That was in 2018. In 2018, around 9,000 ADU is additional dwelling unit, which I think allowed you to add like to rent like your garage out or to rent a room out, I think, to somebody to live full time. People do not realize how fucking cancer AIDS California zoning is. Where's the neoliberal meme? What people think California is versus what it actually is. It's disgusting, bro. Nobody saw that. How do I see the geography thing? Why are there so many buttons? Oh, this. Uh-oh.
Hello, hello.
Who's here?
That one neuroscience/European guy.
What do you want?
I just wanted to ask if I could push you on something, so if you're busy researching.
Jesus Christ. Yeah, what do you want to push me on? Pick one thing, because I'm going to be brain broken.
No, of course.
This is horror. Oh my God, it never
Mostly
ends.
on your take of
healthcare
you
and
can't
insurance.
legislate for bad faith actors.
Oh, just kidding. Sorry. Sure, what about it?
Huh? I think I think you have a really gamer understanding of how politics work. And I think the way you played video games kind of colors the way you speak about politics.
Okay, I
and
disagree,
it feels
but
like,
go ahead.
No, you're totally free to disagree. I feel like when you speak about politics, it sounds like you think about one rule set that is there for everyone, and that rule set is not God-given, but to a certain extent there for everyone, for the entire populace and for the entire governance, and everyone has to adhere to it. And that rule set can't be adapted to someone who doesn't want to adhere to it. Is that a correct... Is that your stance? Have I summarized that correctly?
Can you I don't know, can you restate that?
You think we have one set of rules, and those set of rules are there for everybody, but if someone inherently doesn't want to play with those rules, there's no way that you can close every loophole that those rules would work for even the people who don't want to work with the rules.
Maybe, I guess. That sounds like such a simplistic view of things that I feel like I wouldn't commit to such a dumb position, but if you think I have, then attack it, go for it.
No, absolutely. If I just want to make sure that we're on the same boat. It feels like this, but you can also summarize your position if you want to.
Well, I don't know. We're talking about a very broad thing. I don't know what we're, like, this has gotten so broad, I'm not sure what we're saying. Like, when you say just one set of rules, like, clearly that we're functioning under different actors have different sets of rules that they have to adhere to. There are going to be times when the standards change slightly depending on what's going on. Like, that could be a lot more variable than just one solid set of rules, but...
Then let's make a concrete example. Let's say we take the presidential immunity case.
Okay.
As I understand it, you would argue, well, technically speaking, there's nothing that could be done about this, such that people in the Supreme Court or in the Republican Party would eventually, with enough power, not be able to change those rules, even though that ruling, I would say, goes against the Constitution.
I don't understand. I would say that people in the Republican Party won't be able to change those rules.
That no, you can't make those rules lock solid such that they can't change those rules.
I don't think I'm understanding.
Okay, let me make the positive argument.
Okay.
I think whenever you speak about bad faith actors, and you can tell me if I'm just understanding you entirely wrong here, it sounds like you're saying we can't produce rules that can solidify rules against bad faith actors. I would say there are no bad faith actors in politics. Politics is entirely about the realization of your political goal. And when we start speaking about bad faith actors in the sense of Republicans or anti-constitutionalists going against the Constitution, we're kind of misinterpreting what those people actually are. They just want to create their own set of reality, and at the end of the day, nothing is stopping them to create that set of reality. But when you say those bad faith actors act in bad faith, it sounds like there should be an institution or something that should stop them. But I don't see what institution should be ever there to stop them if they reach just enough power to do what they want to do. And the analogy, okay, I see I'm not getting you here. The analogy that I feel is appropriate here is it sounds like when you speak about bad faith actors, it sounds like you think of the Constitution as like a balancing act, like a video game developer balancing the game. And the video game developers constantly trying to close loopholes and perhaps change the rules of the game such that people who continuously feed, who continuously grieve, who abuse or hack can be deterred. But that is not how politics works. Politics is everyone's just trying to self-realize the entire system. And a more apt analogy would be perhaps a game that is developed by two sets of ideologically opposed people who are constantly trying to ring across the next patch notes. And I feel like when you say, like I said, when you say bad faith actors can't be legislated with, it kind of I don't want to say it sounds like you're giving up, but it kind of misses the point, I think. Is that convincing, or do you get in what direction I want to go?
Maybe. Keep talking in that direction, I think. It just sounds like we're... Like, if we get abstract or reductive enough, then I can morph any position into any position and agree with anything. But I feel like we're too abstract. I think I need to boil it down into something more concrete.
Okay.
Yeah.
When you speak with Hutch, I don't want to throw some shade or anything, just to be 100% clear, but when you speak with Hutch, I feel like the disagreement is that the both of you kind of adhere to varying degrees of how much we should adhere to the set of rules. But you're both in agreement with the fact that there is a set of rules, and that set of rules, principally speaking, cannot just be abandoned and cannot just be reconstituted. And it feels like Hutch is much more closer to the idea that the set of rules is fundamentally unchanging and fundamentally must be adhered to, whereas you are more in a direction of we must adhere to the spirit of the rules, but we can bend the actual outcomes a bit more.
Well, I don't think we should bend the outcome. I mean, if you're adhering to the spirit, I don't know how you're bending the outcomes.
Well, the spirit at the end of the day is liberalism, no?
Well, kind of, but kind of not. Like,
how kind of not?
Oh man, we're having a lot of. I feel like there's a lot of contextual mismatch here. So, okay, so just to drill down on just this particular example. So Hutch will say, we can't sacrifice our rule set to save our rule set. That would be morally bankrupt, kind of, and you would lose the rules. And then my argument in response is, well, we are sacrificing the rule set a little bit to save the broader concept of liberalism. And then we fight on that point to where it sounds like you're saying you're trying to sacrifice the rule in order to save the rule, but what I'm trying to sacrifice is like a lower level or a higher level rule to save a lower or more or less abstract, I guess, rule. So like I'm okay with breaking a rule about the current rule set with the goal of saving liberalism. I'm not trying to sacrifice liberalism to save liberalism, I guess, would be the way that I view it. Does that make sense?
It makes sense. The example that I would make is, let's take the current Supreme Court ruling on the 14th Amendment. As I understand it, they said Congress needs to make a law to enforce it, right?
Yes.
Hutch, I think, would say, well, if that is what the Supreme Court said, we need to enforce that law. Whereas I feel like your position would be to just say fundamentally, no, that position is unconstitutional and we're just going to ignore it.
Well,
and force
not
it
necessarily,
down
or I don't know what we mean when we say ignore it. I don't think I would just say we should ignore all laws. I think I would say we should.
Would you say
we could be a little bit bad faith, basically?
But that would you say you should ignore unconstitutional laws?
No.
Why?
Because the executive doesn't get to choose what's constitutional or unconstitutional. It's up to the Supreme Court.
Well, let's say it's the Congress. Could Congress ignore unconstitutional laws?
No, not legislatively. No, they could pass an amendment to the Constitution.
Could the Supreme Court ignore unconstitutional laws?
Definitionally, it's impossible for them to do so right now, because we view the Supreme Court as basically being they're the secret people that can read. They're the only ones that can read the Constitution, and we don't technically have access to it the way that they do. So to say that the Supreme Court could violate the Constitution would be like saying that God could violate God's word or whatever. It doesn't make any sense, right?
Okay. Then why are you saying it is bad faith to ignore those laws?
Well, when you say ignore the laws, we have to clarify. Do you mean like ignore the letter of the law or ignore the spirit of the law?
The letter.
Well, it would be bad faith to ignore the letter of the law because you're literally breaking the system of government. like everything's would fall apart at that point. No.
Yes, but kind of no. I think it depends on what you want to move the government towards, and if you're happy with those consequences. And I feel like there's a good argument to be made that every quote-unquote law-abiding citizen should ignore unconstitutional laws, which is easy to say, and I know, because everyone will say that. But it kind of goes towards the point that in politics there are no bad faith actors. They are just interpreters who want to kind of further their own agenda. Like in the secessionists in the 19th century, 18th century, they aren't really bad faith actors. They just created their own facts and went on from there. And had they won, they would have been, well, the winners, obviously, and their law would have been what remained. And when we speak of, sorry, go ahead.
So I understand what you're saying. We're in such abstract land. When I look at the people that seceded from the Union, I think they knew that what they were doing probably wasn't allowed. And it seems to be, without knowing a bunch of Civil War history, that they were ready to fight a civil war to prove that point. Like, if I walk into a restaurant and I see a black guy, and I legitimately think I live in a society where I can call this guy the N-word and nothing will happen, and I call him the N-word and he just clocks me, that's a different reality than me walking into that same restaurant, putting my dukes up and then calling the N-word, get ready to fight, because I know what's going to happen if I do it the second time. Comparing it to the immunity stuff, Nixon was hiding that whole is it Black Saturday or Black Friday or the Friday Night Massacre?
The Watergate affair,
yeah, when he started firing everybody, it's because he knew he was fucked. He was gonna get completely fucked on everything, because he knew that he was up to no good. He knew he was doing illegal shit. They were trying to hide it. They were trying to conceal it. And once everything started to come out, he knew he was gonna get impeached. He fucking resigned, and then Ford pardoned him because there were criminal investigations in him. He knew that he was gonna get indicted and he was gonna be federally fucked. So he's operating under that. This is why I try to say that, like, there's a difference between like a law breaker versus somebody who thinks that they don't have to follow the law. Like, criminals bring guns and masks because they know if they get caught, they're going to get fucked. But Trump is the kind of person who would rob a bank in broad daylight and say that it's his right to do so. And for some reason, Republicans are defending that idea. And like, a system can't survive that. Like, systems can survive rule breakers, because I think rule breakers operate in a weird way within the structure of the rules. Like, they know that if they get caught, shit's going to get fucked. But if there are people that are acting with impunity, and then if other people are supporting them with flagrant disregard of the rules, it's a lot, like they're outside of that rule system. Like, do you understand what I'm saying? That like criminals and police officers and citizens all function within the same rule set, even though criminals quote unquote break the rules. It's different than a person thinking that like, oh, well, these rules actually just don't even apply to me.
Just to summarize,
sure,
so that I know I understand. You're trying to say because criminals who are violating laws are precautionary about getting caught, are precautionary about escaping, they implicitly always know that if they get caught, they are fucked, and they're not doing it with impunity. So that acknowledges that they are kind of moving inside of the system, because if they are caught, they have to acknowledge the system, right?
Yeah.
I would disagree. Well, you're correct. But I think the lesson to be learned here is that criminals, very broadly speaking, would they have the power to enforce their crimes, they would most likely do it. If you have a person who's doing a massive bank heist and they have a private army to just ram into the bank, kill every policeman and every military, and then escape to another country, they would do it. And I don't think them bowing, quote unquote, to the law and to the system is not an admission of their wrongdoing, but rather an admission that they are powerless to do better. And I think that is the difference in kind between someone like Trump and the quote-unquote common criminal, since Trump has the power to just ignore everyone in the criminal justice.
Right.
And I think they are kind of the same-ish actor.
I guess but I mean, Nixon theoretically had more or less as much power as Trump kind of sort of does. I'm sure executive power is expanded a bit, but everybody else wasn't playing the game that way. Do you know any like international law?
It depends on what
like. There's this concept of
like human rights law.
Sure, there's this concept of like international. I think it's called customary law or customary international law. And the idea is that it doesn't have to be codified, but if every nation has acted more or less as though this is what you have to do, then these things become just as strong as the Rome Statute, stronger, because you don't even get a choice on whether or not to sign on to these things. International customary international humanitarian law is considered binding everywhere. You have to follow because everybody acts that way. And when people start acting in a different way, I think it can break other people if they don't act that same way as well, and then we all just basically race to the bottom, and it gets completely fucked. I don't know what the point of that was, but I'm just saying that we have to have, everybody has to. I don't know how a rule set survives if people don't act in concordance with the spirit of the rules, at least.
I get, okay. I'm going to run through, I get what you're trying to say. You're trying to say, if no one adheres to the law, essentially everything breaks down and we don't have society. Is that a correct summary?
A little bit. That's technically the middle outcome, though. The worst outcome would be only one side adheres to the rule set and then the other side doesn't. But then the middle bad one is still really bad, which would be neither side adheres to the rule set. And then the best world is where ideally both sides adhere to the rule set.
No, okay, understood. Again, I'm going to try to preempt with a positive argument. I think the thesis here is that politics is a might makes right thing, and everyone is trying to follow their vision, and only the person at the end who wins is the person who quote-unquote followed the rules because they won by default. You can see that, for example, in international law with Israel, or in international law, not to go to Israel, let's go to Russia. If today Russia ends the Ukraine war and they occupy the Donbas region and they just stay there in 10 years or in 100 years, as long as Russia doesn't collapse, this will be Russian territory. Do you agree with that?
Yeah.
Yeah, okay. That is an entire might makes right solution. And I think it would be wrong to call them bad faith actors in the spirit of international law, because they are kind of adhering to international law. They're just enforcing it via force.
I don't think, but they're not adhering to international law. They'd be in violation of international law, right? But they would just be enforcing their own will through.
Well, they would be in accordance with international law insofar that occupation of a territory necessarily follows to that territory belonging to said country.
Well, I don't think that's. I guess I can grant it for this, but that's not necessarily what. I don't think in the UN. I don't think part of the charter allows you to just, if you occupy a territory for long enough, you can take it from another sovereign state.
That is kind of how it works, though. Yes.
No.
I mean, what do you think in 100 years, if Russia still occupies the Donbas, people are going to view this? Well, let me preempt it. Technically speaking, you're right. They would have to culturally take it over. If they were to take over the Donbas, build Russian settlements there, get.
Well, I think there would have to be some official recognition in the UN. There would have to be something passed. But my guess is that something the UN would Ukraine would either acquiesce or something would happen. They would find some treaty between the two of them, and then they would say, okay, fine, this is the new state of affairs.
Kind of. They would eventually acquiesce to it. If in 100, the scenario that I've just built here is if in 100 years Russia still occupies the Donbas and no other war had happened, most people would look bad at Ukraine and say, well, you can't take it over. Much in a similar way as to how the eastern parts of Germany were lost to Poland and Russia. That is technically also an invasion where land just got taken, but because it is now culturally Polish or culturally Russian, no one thinks about.
Well, but this was. Are you talking about
it again?
This is at the end of World War II.
Well,
or World War I.
World Wars applied.
Okay, when Prussia and all. Okay, whatever bullshit. Sure, but I think that the UN and recognizing sovereign states and all of this didn't become a huge thing until especially after World War II. No. I would agree with you otherwise, but
why do Israelis settle then so much? Sorry.
Why do they settle?
Why do Israelis push settlements to the West Bank land? What is the ultimate goal there?
Well, it's to own it completely. But I mean, what are you asking? Are you asking like what their legal argument would be, or?
Yeah.
If you're talking to a mega pro-Zionist scholar, their legal argument is going to be that the mandatory Palestine area that the United Kingdom, that the British government set up, basically said that after a period of however many years, 20 years or whatever the fuck, the government that emerges as a stable government in that region is the one that inherits the state, all the land. So Israel would argue that on the expiration of that mandate in 48, the Israeli government was the only government standing, therefore that entire country belongs to them. They're the only government there. None of the other mandatory periods had multiple governments emerging. It was always a singular government that inherited all the land. So that would be their argument.
Sorry, I haven't been precise enough.
Sure.
As I understand that, if you were to ask very Zionist people, they would say by occupying and settling the land and holding it for long enough, it essentially becomes ours. And eventually the UN, if the Palestinians will have to be pushed back far enough, would have to recognize this as parts of Israel. By a kind of force argument. If they were... It is unclear as far as I understand. And again,
I understand what you're saying. But post UN, post like 50s, like I just don't think that land generally works that way anymore. I think it hasn't for a while. Like when the Soviet Union collapsed and they lost all of their satellite states, there wasn't like a big redrawing of borders even of those states, were there? There might have been, actually, I just don't know. Or like when Yugoslavia was split into different countries like that, they had like the UN... I think, I don't know who exactly was involved in drawing the borders, but I don't think it was like arbitrarily decided. Like there had to be like an agreement, I think, between the peoples living in there. No?
Yeah, across the satellite states. And the satellite states kept to get their mini-government because the Soviet Union was, as the name implies, a union of different Soviet states that were all kind like East Germany had its government views, but I don't think, as far as I understand, Ukraine or Czechoslovakia or other countries, they just kept their satellite status and weren't absorbed into anything.
Sure. Can I run like a quick side argument, and then you don't even have to respond. You can just tell me that it's totally irrelevant to what you're saying. So like, there is like this is why I'm saying it's hard when you get too abstract, because everything can reduce into everything else. So when you say like might makes right, in a way, okay, I'm going to be even more abstract. I'm so sorry. This is like a Randian concept. Have you ever heard of the concept of like enlightened self-interest?
I'm not an Ayn Rand scholar. No.
Okay, then no one is. Okay, but like, if I have two friends and I've got 3 candy bars on a table, okay, like a self-interested person would find a way to eat all 3 candy bars, but like somebody who is like an enlightened self-interested person would share the candy bars with his friends and eat one for himself, because he would recognize that in the long term, this is creating like a more stable dynamic between all of you, and it's encouraging some level of cooperation that's going to turn out better than you just trying to take all 3 candy bars every time you get your hands on them. So when we say like might makes right, I agree with you that that's kind of been the way of the world, but the countries that have enacted on the broadest sense might makes right typically don't practice might makes right in a macro sense, because the world would descend into chaos, right? Like, you know, as much as Russia tries, they do like fabricate pretextual reasons to invade areas, recognizing that they can't just march into a place. They have to have like some peacekeepers there. They have to foment some civil unrest there, like they did in Moldova, like they did in Georgia, like they did in Ukraine, before they go in and do it. Because even though they could, just might makes right, go in and take over everything, the U.S. could do this with all of Central and South America. We recognize that even though they were strongest, if we were to exert our might in such a naive or simplistic way, that not everybody on the planet would go along with that, and everything would just completely fucking fall apart.
Yeah. What is the question?
What I'm saying is that, like, so when you say, like, might, the world is like, might makes right, that's like, it's kind of sort of true, but the mightiest actors don't act that way on like a micro level, because everything would become like incredibly chaotic. So like, it's true, but it's true in almost a meaningless way, because that's not the rule set that the mightiest people have enforced a rule set that they generally play by, although that's gotten worse, unfortunately, over the past really few decades. That's what Carney's speech in was it Munich was about, or was it Brussels, when he said that there was like the fiction of the international rules-based order, was the idea that we kind of pretended this was here, but it was a fiction, but like the U.S. government, you know, and other strong countries are clearly not fully compliant, right? Like Despite Russia fabricating pretextual reasons to invade Georgia or Ukraine, it's not legal. It's not really. It's not even by the letter of the law internationally. And then same thing with the way the U.S. can, everything in Iran and everything else is not really, like, even in a fabricated pretextual way, it's not really legal internationally. So like it exists on like a, so like it's true, but it's true in a trivial sense. Does that make sense?
Kind of.
Okay.
I would say you're kind of emotionally loading the idea of might makes right. I would, for example, say the civil rights movement is a might makes right movement, because at the end of the day, they got their goals through and kind of got their goals accepted, and everyone had to just acquiesce to it.
Yeah.
And the broader point that I'm trying to go towards is, it is in politics in general, but right now in the US specifically, is imperative that we understand that Republicans are not in any abstract way bad faith, or that they're not in any abstract way not adhering to the rules. They are creating their own system. They are changing the system. Similar to, let's say you're playing, do you know what Uno is? Do you have that in the US, the game?
Uno? Yeah.
The card game? Yeah. Okay. Like, sorry, cultural differences. I never know what what other people know. It is remarkably strange that when I play Uno with different people have very, very weird rules, and everyone kind of has their house rules. There are official Uno rules, but when I go to someone, it's always a bit of a gamble what rule set we're actually using. At the end of the day, one person kind of wins out over the other person because they acquiesce to the rules.
Yep, but hold on. Really importantly, in your example, when one person wins out, what happens when you guys play?
One person acquiesces, one gives up,
but
and the other
when you
gets
guys
the rules through.
when you guys go to play the game.
Oh, you mean they both adhere to the rules?
Correct.
That is true. But the broader point that I'm trying to make here is that there is not some amorphous point of rules that everyone needs to follow, because from the perspective of the official rules, both people, even if they acquiesce to one set of rules, are bad faith actors because they're misappropriating the original rules and are using the homebrew set of rules.
So here's my this is why I would say you can be like a type of bad faith actor, and it's because when you guys do your Uno thing, the reason why it's so important to recognize that both of you are playing by the same rule set is, imagine if you went to some game of Uno and imagine some guy said like, well, this is the rule set that we play with, where we count every 1 and 2 as a wild card. And you're like, okay, fine, we'll do that. Imagine if they told you, no, actually, you still have to play with the original rule set and we're going to play only the wild card rule set. Well, now it's like, well, hold on, this is fucked. And my issue with the current thing that the Republicans are doing is that if both sides played by the same rule set that Republicans are trying to develop, the country would be a disaster. The country would fall apart. But Republicans are currently playing by their rule set with the assumption that Democrats won't ever emulate it. And I think that's, unless there's like some moral argument for why different people should be held to different moral standards that are otherwise equivalent people, like just because of different political beliefs, that can't be, I can't accept that. So this is my criticism, I guess, of the way Republicans have set up the current system.
No, absolutely. And I get that. But my response to this would be that going forward, Democrats have to think about what they actually want, and that is then the rule set, or not necessarily the rule set, but the vision of what they want to enforce. And within that vision, I would say the next goal should be the dissolution of the Republican Party, and then perhaps a post.
Well, but it has to be whatever rule set you create. It has to be a rule set that like everybody is going to enjoy playing by, because if you just craft these like not unidimensional, these like one-sided rule sets, then the other side's not going to play by it, and you're just going to be like spiraling to the bottom.
No, you're going to craft.
So you have to craft a rule set where you can lose and where the other side can win, so that they accept that rule set and they're willing to play by it. No.
Well, no, because you could just craft your rule set that you want to have, and then you enforce it.
Yeah, but then the outcome of that is probably going to be worse than a game that both sides agree to play. Like, I don't want to live in a one-party state where the other party has been dissolved.
Well, it doesn't have to be a one-party state, but how do you think the Republicans will ever come back?
Well, I think we have to do a lot about the social media algorithms. But I think if Republicans knew that there was going to be retribution, nonviolent, if they knew there was going to be retribution for the actions that they committed, then they just wouldn't do the actions. But right now it seems like Democrats won't do anything. That's always been the impression that Republicans have had. So they've always had the feeling that they could operate with impunity.
Let's say you are the government of the Weimar Republic, and it is, I don't know, like 1929, 1927, and you see Hitler's rise to power. Without dissolving, thank you. Without dissolving the Nazi Party, what do you do? Or what would you do? How would you try to handle the situation?
Fuck, I don't know. But I also don't think dissolving just the Nazi Party would help.
Why? That is, sorry.
Well, one thing I would say
question
that you have to be really careful of is comparing modern America to post-World War I Germany, because I think post-World War I Germany had legitimate grievances that country was experiencing something that was just completely fucked from their perspective, like was actually completely fucked. And in the wake of it being completely fucked, I think a lot of people were beginning to look for, multiple political parties were spinning up that were looking for non-democratic solutions to, how to save themselves from the situation that they found themselves in after, I guess, the fall of the empire, or whatever, right after World War I.
Yeah.
So I don't know how you would regulate your way out of a failing state.
Well, you kind of ban every party that is anti-constitutional.
And you think that would,
as long as you have the power monopoly?
Well, don't you literally have on the border of your state, like a state whose, was it the Tsarist or whatever, that just got fucking all overthrown and murdered, and now you're gonna just ban all of the opposing political parties in the hopes that people chill, and your country that's like hyperinflating and is occupied by black French soldiers and everything is getting fucked? Like, I don't know if that would be a successful plan of action. No.
Do you think the alternative? Okay. Do you think the best alternative would be to just let them be?
I don't think. It's not like the Nazi Party was just one of I don't know, was it like 6 or 7 different parties in Germany that were all like anti-democratic, I think mainly right-wing parties, but even on the left side, there were, I just don't think I don't think that there was any, I don't know if they could have like politically regulated their way out of that, out of that
scenario. Do you know
scenario.
that the Nazi Party was actually banned after the Bierholt Putsch?
Sure. But the Nazi Party wasn't the only anti-democratic right-wing or left-wing party.
Well, yeah, it's a difference in kind, really, because we have parties like the Nationalists, which kind of weren't really democratic at all, but still did good governance, and we have figures like Hindenburg, who also wasn't really democratic, but kind of acquiesced to the constitution. And then on the other hand, we have the Nazi Party, who are just, well, the literal Nazis. And I think there's a difference in kind between how radical both sides are. And I agree that there must be you can't just ban every opposition away. Entirely true. But I think in the American perspective, it always feels like when people are discussing what is allowed and what is bad faith and what is good faith and whatever, it feels like there's a sentiment of just everything goes, and we can't do anything against, quote unquote, unconstitutional things. And it feels like that is just a downstream admission of defeat from the idea that we can't do anything against bad faith actors.
Well, to be clear, I'm not saying we can't do anything against bad faith actors. It just probably isn't going to be like creating more rules that they've already shown that they have a total and utter disregard for.
Do you think Donald Trump should have been banned from the ballots?
100 million% yes. By the 14th Amendment, though.
Yeah. Why is that the case, but the Nazi Party couldn't have been banned?
I'm not aware of any Weimar Republic law or something that they had violated or broken that would have I do know that Hitler being released from prison or whatever was probably stupid.
Well, they literally they tried to coup the government.
Yeah.
As a party. I think. Do you remember our last discussion, perhaps? I know that you've been like kind of carrying the parallel structure, talking a bit forward, but something that I've tried to emphasize last time is that it's not just that there is a Republican establishment, but also there's a Republican underground. And I think it is naive to think, oh, if we just ban Trump, everything is going to be quote unquote fine, and we can kind of legislate our way through bad apples and bad presidents.
Yeah, this is actually a fairly influential conversation for me. I focused a lot more on when I bring up like the Heritage Foundation and the Federalist Society or whatever.
Yeah.
It's a thing that I've thought of more. I had in my Tim Miller notes. Yeah.
Which I'm thankful for, by the way. But the next point in that chain of logic kind of would be to say, well, if that is the case, we kind of need to do something against those institutions, and that underground needs to be, to the extent of that it is unconstitutional, not undemocratic, but unconstitutional, removed from the country. No?
Maybe, but are we leaving the Germany example and going back to the U.S.? My big issue between the U.S. and the Germany example is that, like, I feel like there were material conditions and issues of national pride and feelings about what, you know, the empire was prior to the World War I collapse and everything, that there were super understandable reasons in my mind why people in Germany were getting hardcore radicalized by the conditions that existed post World War I, right? And then in the United States, there are reasons, obviously, why Republicans are the way they are, but they're not. A lot of them, I think, are, I would argue, fabricated or put in front of people. Like, this is a very difficult counterfactual, but, like, do you acknowledge that there is a world where, I'm going to get clipped for this, but, like, in the long run, World War II might have actually been way better for Germany than if World War II had never happened? Like, imagine the Great War is the final World War, and then there's a status quo that develops post World War I, and then that just carries forward, 100 years into the future, and then Germany just kind of grows out of it and becomes whatever it was after World War I. Like, is there a world where that Germany is actually worse than the Germany that exists today? Yeah, go ahead.
Did you say the world is better if World War II never happened, or did you say World War II would be better if World War II never happened?
I'm saying, is the Germany that exists today as a result of World War II, potentially a better Germany that would have existed had Germans accepted the status quo in World War I and just carried forward? Like, right now, I know it's a very unfair counterfactual, because Germany is like one of the economic powerhouses of fucking Europe, and it's hard to imagine Germany necessarily doing. I mean, they seem to be doing pretty well, I would say, all considered. But, like, so it almost seems like I'm setting up a counterfactual where I can only win. But I don't think there's. I'm trying to appeal to, like, a fact of the matter argument a little bit here, more than just like the fact of propaganda. Like, when Trump says this country was shit and now it's the hottest country ever, he's lying. But when Hitler and everybody says, they've taken everything from you, all of Europe is laughing at you, we're fucked, this is bullshit. Like, there's a lot more truth to that. And I don't know if the Germany that would have grown in the status quo post World War I could have ever grown to the heights that the Germany that, came out of World War II and the world, kind of like the world order that came after World War II. I don't know if the Germany that could have grown in the world order post World War I necessarily would have grown to the same heights as the Germany that existed post World War II after the new kind of world order with the UN and everything else. I know it's a really difficult counterfactual, but
it kind of depends on what. It kind of depends on what additional things you're willing to grant. I don't think that had Germany stayed the way it had, and had France continued to establish dominance through the Treaty of Versailles over Germany, I do think Germany would have been in a worse position. Most likely because, as far as I understand, there had been plans by the Soviets to expand further west.
Sure, yeah.
And the Soviets, through the Comintern, were trying to, destabilize the entire West. And
every
get
single,
global,
Which was still, and I
think
know
in
we look
that-
at it retrospectively as being stupid and silly now, but all of Europe, I think, right, was scared about like the communists,
absolutely.
and the Soviets were
that is
explicitly trying to foment that, like red parties and shit, or red parties or whatever through other countries, But ignoring that, we'll assume there wasn't a massive communist takeover or whatever all of Europe, but yeah.
Yeah, but then we have to assume that the big thing why Germany is the powerhouse, quote unquote, amongst other things, it is, besides its location, besides its culture, besides its decentralization, is the fact that for the longest time it was the border of the Cold War. And so it had massive interest from the United States and from every other quote-unquote ex-allied nation except for the Soviets. So on the Soviet side, people were trying their best to establish a wall, a military, a state within a state that they could occupy and eventually launch attacks from through the Warsaw Pact. And on the other side, people like the United States, like the United Kingdom, like France, had to ally with Germany because they were the forefront of the next war. And France didn't want to be the partner, well, not the partner, the border to Russia. Similar to how Germany tried to lobby Poland into NATO, because then Germany wouldn't be the border to the Russian quote unquote empire that then persisted.
Sure.
So I think you're kind of right with your counterfactual, but only because there was an interest of the United States in Europe, and there was an interest of the remaining empires.
What I'm kind of
Germany.
saying is that like we shouldn't take it for granted that, as horrible as everything was for World War II, that Germany ended up in a better place because the material conditions and everything were so dire post World War I. In the United States, I don't think you can say the same thing about Trump. That's why I don't always like to make the comparisons. Like, I don't know if there's ever a world where I can say like, man, it was kind of rough, but thank goodness Trump was here for these 8 years. Like, we probably, we came out, but like, I just don't know if that's ever the case. Like the world, the entire world and the US would be better with Hillary in 2016, would be better with Joe Biden 2020, whatever. Yeah, but go ahead.
I think you're using hindsight to bolster your argument, because I don't think that anyone in Germany in 1946 would say, well, now that Hitler is gone, we can enjoy our great German nation again. And I don't think that anyone in 1950 would say that. I don't think anyone in 1960 would say that.
True, but if I were to ask them in 1950, right, what were your fathers, grandfathers, what were their feelings of, Germany, during the First World War and immediately after, they would be able to point to real issues of just of insane despair, of the French and the fucking Ruhr or whatever, the hyperinflation, the the destruction of their country, just the everything, the way that they were viewed in the world stage, everything would be that. But whereas for the Trump stuff, it's like what happened in 2016 at the end of Obama, right? You've got one of the smartest political men, Shapiro, saying, well, Obama said that Henry Louis Gates, he made a comment on that case early, and then he said that the kid that got killed by Zimmerman, what was the kid's name? Fuck. Trayvon Martin. He said Trayvon Martin looked like his own son. Like, that's the complaint. Like, I don't think, I think you could find Germans, in the late 40s, however embarrassed or ashamed they might have been, for like, damn, what the fuck happened with you guys? What was going on? Like, they'd be like, shit was fucked. Yeah, we're not proud of it, but shit was fucked. But like, for conservatives, if they had a sober, true look of the past in 2030, like, guys, what the fuck? What happened with Trump? They're going to be like,
I disagree.
Obama was black? You think so? Or yeah, go ahead. Explain. Yeah.
I think I think in 1979, manufacturing peaked in the United States, and from there on out, the Rust Belt deindustrialized into the 2000s with the first China shock following the financial crisis. And I think if you line those events up, there is a somewhat clear path to the radicalization in a certain sense of some parts of the United States. And I think something that plays very easy into those realities is that there's no safety net in the United States. If you are well, again, I'm sorry, you can tell me if I'm wrong here because I'm not American, but from what I understand, if you were a worker in the Rust Belt, I don't know, let's say you've been born in the 60s, you kind of go into manufacturing and your jobs slowly decline. It gets taken over by automation, it gets outsourced, it goes to India, it goes to China. And then suddenly the China shock happens China comes into the world stage, takes over massive amounts of manufacturing, massive amounts of outsourcing are happening, and you're suddenly not homeless, but you're jobless. And then the financial crisis happens, which obviously hits disproportionately affects poorer people. I do see that there is economic unrest there. On top, of course, of the
like. I agree with you that there can be, kind of, but materially, this is like so different, right? Like the United States went from being a manufacturing powerhouse. Like, why did we abandon some of the Rust Belt? It was because we found even more productive stuff to invest our nation's resources into. It was crypto, AI, software related stuff. We found that other countries could manufacture these things for cheaper. We have the most, one of the most productive workforces in the country. We have, I think, one of the strongest or the strongest domestic purchase market, like import market in the country. The U.S. consumer is the strongest consumer in the world. Like, you can argue that this damaged people in the United States for sure. But I think Germany was the number one manufacturing powerhouse of the world in World War I. And I think I don't remember, but after Versailles, didn't they lose like half their, I don't know if it was like their fucking mines or their manufacturing plant, but their shit got fucked. And it's not like they were like, oh, let's stop all of our iron refineries because we're going to start doing software. It was, oh shit, it's being taken by other countries because we lost a war and our empire has been divided and we're fucked. Like, you can make an argument for some disproportionate amount of harm related to Rust Belt manufacturing in the United States, but that was for the country to advance as a whole, which it obviously and undeniably did, maybe to the detriment of some individual workers in the U.S., for sure, or a section of workers in the U.S., for sure. You can make that argument, but I don't think that's at all comparable to like Germany as a country being severely harmed or damaged post World War I. Now, I'm not trying to argue that what I'm saying is that the difference is because of how it's happening, that this is like a difference in kind to where I can I think given the facts on the ground, obviously it would sound crazy to say this today, but like I can be sympathetic towards where Nazi sentiments or far-right sentiments or anti-democratic sentiments came from in the Weimar Republic. I'm sympathetic to that. I can't be sympathetic to the facts on the ground for Trumples. That's just
can you be sympathetic to a certain extent that if you, let's say we go 10 years back, it's like 2016, maybe even 2012, can you be sympathetic to the fact that some people might just feel disenfranchised with the politics of the United States, and it feels just we're basically going back from the Clintons to the Bushes, back to Obama, but then back to the Clintons, and there's this growing feeling of poorer people are losing their jobs. They are the big losers of the financial crisis. They can't afford their healthcare. There's no safety net for them.
Yeah.
And now there's like another Clinton, like another dynasty that's going to...
Yeah, I could definitely feel that, which in my mind would make me understand, like, man, I hate it, but I understand Clinton lost and Kasich won, or Rubio won, or Cruz won. But Trump? Now, to be fair, I'm a lot less critical of the first Trump election than the second one, which is just beyond comprehension to me, because in the first one, even I was on the fence initially in terms of like, well, maybe once he's like president, he'll kind of like turn it on and he'll stop being such a weirdly confrontational, divisive guy. But I mean, he never really did. And obviously by the end, he was trying to coup the government. But in the beginning, but like, I mean, they still chose Trump over every other alternative. It's not like that. It's not like it was just Clinton versus Trump. Trump emerged victorious from a primary of like 11 candidates.
Okay. I'm going to be a tiny bit personal because I followed politics.
You can be mega personal
as well
go
in 2000. What? Yeah.
You can be mega personal. Go for it.
Yeah, it's a bit shameful, so like, don't hate on me. But had I been in the United States and had I been 18 in 2016, I probably would have voted for Trump.
Sure.
Because the feeling that I got at the time was the exact same that I said. It felt like everyone is just a corporate suit. Everyone is kind of doing their very high-level, sophisticated politics for the donor class, to invoke Cenk Uygur here. And it felt like Trump was an outsider, a breath of fresh air, someone who would have been able to shake up the system, ironically. Now with the knowledge of hindsight, I know that to govern effectively, you need experience in governance, and governance isn't as easy as just go there, like sign a law, and then that's it. But I feel like that is caused by a lack of education.
Yeah, and a lot of stuff. But I can also understand
States.
what where were you living in? Where are you from? Germany, or do you live in Germany?
Yes, I am from Germany.
And so, right when Trump is running in 2016, were you living in Germany the whole time?
Yeah.
Like I can't speak to everything, but I imagine there's like growing discontent across Europe post refugee crisis. The global financial crisis hit Europe a bit. You'd had Angela Merkel for over a decade at that point.
16 years.
Yeah.
Sorry,
by
at the time,
2016, yeah. So like I could see somebody in Germany like having that feeling of like, do I want another decades-long business as usual politician when everything just feels like a little bit not okay right now, or do I want to shake it up a little bit? That's why I'm saying, like, I'm even sympathetic to your view there. But even in America, I'm sympathetic to Trump 1 voters, even though I think there were problems. But like, I'm somewhat sympathetic towards them. But Trump 2 is like Jesus. But also like, I just don't think that Trump 1 necessarily. Well, no, yeah, no, I'll just say that. Yeah, I'm somewhat sympathetic to Trump 1 voters. Yeah. For that, yeah.
No, absolutely. But the point that kind of gets us back to the initial conversation. Do you know of the term Gleichschaltung? I think equalization would be a good translation in Nazi Germany.
No, I'm not aware of that term.
Where everything, basically, essentially, the state has taken everything and put it in line with the state's agenda. So private production is states focused. As long as you go with the state,
you're good to run your business.
Yeah, exactly. That is kind of what happens with the Republican Party. They just equalize. And everyone who already was in there just got introduced. What's the word?
Inducted? Introduced?
They got forced, inducted. They got forced deeper into the cult.
Okay.
And I do understand that the way that in the United States politics is set up, it is very much a team game because you only have 2 solutions. And thus, if you are in that team and you only get to hear how much Trump is winning, you day in, day out, and you get sucked deeper into those institutions that now start recruiting on campuses, that now get their lawyers through the entire thing that we discussed last time. I do understand why people kind of go down the road and start to radicalize. Like one of the most well-studied, phenomena in psychology is the phenomenon of group radicalization, where you essentially, do you know of that? Do you know that?
No, but based on my experiences in life at this point, I can guess, but you can tell me where you're going.
So the classical setup is, you have, or like the classical teaching moment is, you have a group of students and a lecturer, and every student, well, they kind of either don't like or they're a bit on the fence about the lecturer individually, but then they get together and they start to radicalize because one student might say, I really don't like his lecture slides. And the next one goes, oh yeah, that is true, but I also don't like the way he kind of speaks and he does a lot of M's and ums. And then the next one comes and goes like, he's always so sweaty and like, not really. And so it just continues and you just add to every little part until the people, although individually they are not radicalized, as a group are much further down the road, and you just you can't really get back there. And I feel like that is what's happening to the Republican Party. And sorry.
This is part of what I argue about, or I kind of tease this concept actually when I talk about how we've withdrawn into different political realities. The lack of testing or conflict between both sides there like causes them to become so much crazier than they would otherwise. That if you were to have a frequent debate in the United States over the minimum wage, maybe in the middle we find that minimum wage comes to be $12 an hour, while people on the far left are pushing for $15 an hour and people on the far right are pushing for no minimum wage. That if you separate these groups in a very short amount of time, I think I'm seeing now people are arguing. I feel like I've seen lawmakers or far left Democratic, I don't know if these are political figures or candidates running for races, say that like we need a $25 an hour minimum wage. And it's like, we didn't even get 12 or 13, 25 an hour federal minimum wage. What the fuck are you? And these are still like in like mainstreamish candidates running for racist spaces. I can't imagine. Well, in the individual conversations, they're not even talking about wages. They're saying capital needs to be abolished or whatever. But they accelerate and they get so crazy so quickly. Yeah, for sure. Yeah.
What I'm the 2 points that I'm trying to make is, on one hand, when you say we have to adhere to the laws and we have to fight bad faith actors, it sounds like you're adhering to a world order that is gone. And I would rather the discussion being centered around what is the next thing we want to go towards. It stands, the system is fucked. It is like.
Yeah, I think I generally agree with that directionally. Like, because I'll make the same complaint when you brought up like the Rust Belt stuff. Like, you can't go back. You can never go back to the way things were. I agree with that, right? Unless you have a very, very clear path to do it. I would argue that in my world, I think there is a clear path to do it, because the thing that I would want is to get rid of the algorithmically generated and sorted media feeds. I actually didn't even realize until today how insane it actually has gotten for some people. Like, I don't know if you watched earlier when I was watching Asmongold stream.
No, I haven't, sadly.
I didn't know this, but like every single Asmongold stream is literally just him scrolling his For You page on Twitter. That's what he does for 8 hours every single day. And then he just disseminates that to his audience. Yeah, unironically. And I mean, Hassan Hassan's not quite as bad, but he's pretty close as well, where it's just him scrolling his Twitter. Like the different worlds that can be created for you based on the social media feeds that are like serving you content is so destructive. Like, it is, I agree with you that like that is a world that you could fight in by doing it on our side. But I think both people engaging in that fight, I don't think it produces any good outcome, because like, this is more specific and less abstract, but like in a democracy or in like a marketplace of ideas, the reason why both people fighting tends to produce a better outcome is because both people are fighting they're fighting for the same reality. They're not both constructing their own realities, right? You have like kind. Sorry, go ahead, and I'll. Oh, you can tell me why you disagree. Like, I feel like they do. Like, as crazy as you want to be, if you want to sit here and scream, liberals love violence, if I'm there and you have an audience with me, you have to address what I'm saying. Trump does not disavow violence. Even if you're screaming back and forth at me, everybody listening to you is going to hear me saying that. And that's going to do something more than, because of the radicalization thing that you talked about, right? Like, they might want to stick to their point of like, well, the liberals are violent. The liberals are violent, while I'm shouting that, Trump doesn't disavow. It's an annoying conversation for me to have. And somebody could say, well, look, they're trying to create their own reality. But if I wasn't there, or if there was no opposition there, they wouldn't even be talking about how the liberals are creating violence. They would be controlling the Department of Justice and filing indictments against organizations like the Southern Poverty Law Center, claiming that even right-wing violence is actually just staged by institutional left-wing actors. And that's where we're at right now. That type of thing is so much crazier than them screaming at a liberal disagreeing with them. That the lack of conflict and the lack of critical engagement from both sides has allowed the sides to separate, and then especially the right, and then I would argue the far left is capitalized on this immensely to where they're just spinning off their entirely own realities. And that lack of engagement, I think, is just fatal. I don't think we can survive that.
I think that is a very American way of viewing it, in the sense of that it feels like the American political discourse has always in the back of its mind the idea that if we just, I don't want to say sunlight is the best disinfectant, because I know you hate that one, but it feels like people are just trying to say, oh, as long as we bring everything to the forefront and as long as we engage, everything will eventually level out and there won't be any radicalization. But that kind of ignores how those parties and those radicals work.
So I understand what you're, well, real quick, I understand what you're saying, and I agree with this 1,000,000,000,000,000%, but like, you agree that it's probably important to eat a well-balanced diet and get a lot of protein if you want to go to the gym and build a lot of muscle, right? Yeah, yes. I'm not trying to trap you. There's like a specific...
No, it is a bit morally loading if you say a well-balanced diet, because that kind of...
As in a proper assortment of like macros and micros. It could be vegan if you wanted to... What?
Sorry, I'm not like... I'm not thinking you're going to trap me. I'm just... thinking to make the best counter argument with this. Let's just grant it. Let's just say
sure. Let's grant it. Thank you.
I'll
Okay.
agree.
Yes.
Sorry.
So you need to have an appropriate diet if you're trying to put on a lot of muscle. If you were given somebody who was starving to death, you wouldn't be going towards like an optimal bodybuilding or powerlifting diet. You would just want this person to eat something at all. So like when you tell me that simply platforming an idea is not enough, I agree with you 1,000,000,000%. I've spent probably the majority of my political career fighting against bad platforming. However, even bad platforming today, I would take bad platforming over the complete lack of platforming. That's how bad and far gone it is. So I agree with you that, trust me, bro, nobody has cringed harder at that fucking sunlight is the best disinfectant bullshit. Like, I hate all the marketplace of ideas. Like, I used to make fun of Ruben and everybody was saying this shit all the time. But, like, it's better to have, like, that type of back and forth where even if it's, like, bullshitty kind of versus right now where it's just not at all. It's completely nothing. Like, yeah.
Yeah. The issue as I see it is that even if it were quote unquote good platforming, the people who are already radicalized will only radicalize themselves further. To like make a personal example, I think if you and Hasan were to debate, the people who are in his community would inevitably go away with the impression that you did bad and he destroyed you, ever, always. And I'm pretty sure that by the mere fact that you debated, he could then tell his audience, well, I debated him and I crushed him. So obviously, like, it is the same what happened with the Finkelstein discussion.
Well, I super disagree with you there. And I think that the record, and I think the reality of today, I think actually bears out my argument, because if that was true, then why wouldn't Hasan debate somebody like me or XQC?
Because he's fragile.
No, I think it's because he knows there's
fragile.
nothing to gain. There literally isn't, and because he is afraid that he would lose. Hasan and me would have a debate, and I agree with you that the majority of voices in both communities would definitely claim, the respective victory on either side. But there would be enough. First of all, Hasan, even when he goes on these fucking libcuck platforms with John Slurper, whatever, from Pod Save America, like, he has to moderate his message even for that libcucked audience. Hasan is never going to be saying any of that crazy, insane Marxist shit around me. So he's already going to have to moderate the fuck out of his position. And then even on that, like, I can fight and push for things. And even if his audiences feel like he kind of, has won on some points, he's going to have to answer questions that he ordinarily never has to answer. And the cracks will show. And that would be with just one debate. But imagine if there was like a culture of doing that stuff pretty constantly. Like, there's a reason why I think all of these people have gained so much power by avoiding all these types of conversations. Like, they just don't do it.
Yeah, I get what you're trying to say, but I would make the same argument that you made earlier. We can't go back to that because the bubbles have settled now. And if we're going back a bit and have those massive debates, let's say we have like debates between Shapiro and I don't know who's like on the left side, the equal of Shapiro, but like we have those big debates. The bubbles, as they have already formed, have been formed. And the people that would have been convinced in the argument that you just made are the groups that are neither aligned with you strongly, but are also not aligned with Hasan strongly.
So here's where
the group that...
So this is where I'm leaning into the social media aspect for being so important to this, and the thing that I think is kind of invisible to a lot of people. I understand what you're saying, but the thing is that I don't think that those types of people that insulate themselves, I don't think that it would be as successful because they just wouldn't gain the traction otherwise without having a social media algorithm that reinforces their political team. So like if Hasan says, I'm not going to engage with anybody, it's okay, because if I go into social media anything and I engage friendly with some far lefty stuff, I'm automatically going to get connected to so much other far lefty stuff. I'm automatically going to get hooked up to all of this. I'm going to have my own little reality served up to me, and that'll be okay. But if that didn't exist and I had to go out and manually find stuff, well, now, if I'm scrolling a thing and it's just chronological, well, now I see Hasan says that all capitalists are evil. And now I see the next post is Destiny says Hasan fucked a 15-year-old in a German brothel. And then the next post is like something on Fox News. Well, now it's a lot harder. There's a lot more conflicting information here. And I'm either going to disengage or have to form at least a slightly better opinion about everything going on, because I'm not going to get one-sided slop served to me constantly through those algorithms. And I think that encourages more for people to kind of fight a bit more honestly about what it is they're trying to further, because they can't rely on a totally false reality. Like, without these social media algorithms, Hassan would have had to apologize for the dog shock thing. But because of how strong the insulating factor is behind, I think, these social media algorithms, people like Taylor Lorenz can say, ignore your eyes, he didn't shock his dog. And that works. It's okay. There's no critical confrontation there because you're constantly connected with other people that agree and say the same thing.
I think there are two parts that need to be separated here. For one, and you can tell me if you disagree with this.
Sure.
The hypothesis that I will argue for is, if you are correct that it is not solely, but in large part due to the algorithms, were there equivalent talking heads, of course not equivalent to Hassan, because that space is more driven by young people, but were there equivalent talking heads on the Republican side before social media, before Facebook? And I think the answer is yes. I think the people just kind of shifted their environment. And I'm 100% on your side. I think algorithmic content should be banned. It is not good. It should be gone. But I don't think that solves the underlying issue, because those people that then just like scroll Facebook or watch Twitter or whatever, they probably would just go back to Newsmax and get their news there.
I agree with you, but at least I think people have a bit of a better understanding. This is a little bit more tenuous. It's harder for me to prove this one, but like, I feel like people at least have a better understanding of where their media is coming from, and things are a bit more honest back in those days. Like, I don't think if I would have asked the standard conservative in 2010 or the 2000s, where do you get your media from? I don't think the average conservative would have said, oh, I get it from a variety of sources. Today, they can bullshit themselves into thinking that. Like in the 2000s, somebody like Joe Rogan wouldn't be able to explode all over right-wing media spheres because you wouldn't have these algorithms connecting and reinforcing these opinions so much. But because you do now, whenever these right-wingers who all have their talking points, whenever they go and visit Joe Rogan and he reinforces their points and then gets incorporated into that media ecosystem, and then all of it starts to become self-reinforcing, that type of thing is enabling the creation of that ecosystem. Whereas 20 years ago, it would, like, Joe Rogan is just never going to click through political shit to become massively politically informed. Like, it's just not going to happen. It doesn't, unless, like, he would have to go, like, people back then would have to say, I'm going to click it. Like, you didn't become, or at least I'm not aware of it. Like, you didn't become accidentally radicalized, or at least I'm not aware of how that would happen, because you would have to go and seek out. Like, I grew up political. I loved debating people in high school. I went to a prep school, I would say, that had very intelligent people. And I think there were like 3 other kids in my whole class that had strong political opinions that I debated. I want to say like 2 or 3. I don't think anybody else did. Nowadays, I feel like if I go to an average school, and maybe this isn't true, maybe I should ask Nathan this, I guess, where I go to a high school class, I feel like half the class or more are going to have very, very strong opinions about everything. And I feel like that's because so much of culture has gotten connected to these like social media worlds where everybody's being roped into everything. Whereas before I'd have to go and seek out politics. Now it's served to me if the algorithm thinks I can engage with it in a way that's going to keep me clicking through more posts.
I agree insofar that I think you're probably right with saying that the conservatives now would say they are, quote unquote, taking a balanced diet of media. What I would disagree with is that I don't think that it would change anything politically. Like, if you look at the Gallup polls regarding media consumption since the beginning of the 2000s, conservatives have essentially consumed the same right-wing media, so just starting with Fox News and then Newsmax, and then later on the influencer world. But it is the same media. And even though if they say, well, now I'm consuming a broader media apparatus, they still vote Republican, they still act Republican, and they still radicalize themselves as Republicans. I do.
That's
think
well.
you're
I do
also
agree.
correct. Yeah,
I do agree with you. Maybe that they would still consume some of the same news, but like something happened with just conservatives that didn't happen with liberals. Compare Bernie Sanders with Donald Trump. Both of them are populist figures, but if Bernie Sanders would have been president, if we would have gone from Bill Clinton to Barack Obama to Bernie Sanders, we would say, yeah, we've definitely moved along a bit to the left. But the departure from Obama to Sanders isn't even remotely as crazy as the departure from Bush to Trump or the other candidates that were even on stage. Like, think about the difference between Bernie Sanders and Hillary Clinton, and then compare that to the difference between Ted Cruz and Donald Trump. It's like there's something happened there that enabled that conservative ecosystem to just drive. You mentioned that radicalization phenomenon that just drove the entire conservative movement in this country off a ledge way more than it ever did on the Democratic side.
Have you ever listened? Sorry, what I'll say now will be not fully finished because I haven't fully finished researching it, and I didn't expect this now to come up.
Sure.
But last time you asked me why have only Republicans built parallel institutions, and I couldn't really give a satisfactory answer to this beyond, well, the classical democratic institutions just broke away and never got replaced, whereas Republicans kept their private equity institutions.
Okay.
I think that answer is somewhat incomplete. I think now that I've read more into it, the Republicans, we don't have to call them Republicans, but one party in the United States was pro-civil rights, and one party, the same party would necessarily have to be anti-secession or pro-reconstruction. The United States, ever since the Civil War, has been split into the ex-secessionists, the anti-reconstructionists, and the quote-unquote pro-unionists.
Okay.
You can see this in the voting patterns of Nixon's election. Nixon, through the Southern strategy, tried to catch low-income, lower education voters that used to vote Democratic, but throughout the civil rights movement became increasingly alienated with the common quote-unquote black culture. And if you listen to Nixon's speeches, that doesn't sound like the big unifying president that we maybe now think of presidents of the past century. And Reagan is the same. Those people courted racists. I'm sorry to say this directly, but those people, as a matter of fact, courted racists and tried to stage their political power on the racist South, which is still in effect today. And I didn't think there is as much of a surprise if you court a racist voter base, analogous to the AfD in Germany, where people just court racists to go into power. If you court a racist voter base, you eventually end up with a racist in power. I can't really tell you where the jump is between George Sr. and George Jr. Bush Sr. and Bush Jr. because I just haven't gotten there. But at least Nixon and Reagan were doing their best to court those secessionists. And then it isn't surprising if that party that suddenly tries to go back in time, remove the civil rights, remove quote-unquote human rights, suddenly happens to bring forth a Donald Trump. Does that make sense, or is that too disconnected from you?
I understand what you're saying, but I'm not viewing Donald Trump, I guess, through like a moral lens. I'm more viewing him as like through an epistemic one. That from Donald Trump's morality aside, it's just the fact that he can lie so much and fabricate so much. And then the moral depravity is more than just racism. Like racism wasn't even, I don't think, like the top three morally depraved things that Trump had engaged in. Yeah, go ahead.
As I understood it, the question you just asked earlier, which I tried to answer, was why is it the case that the Republicans just walk themselves off a ledge, whereas the Democrats were Obama and then
relatively tethered,
Bernie Sanders. Yeah, and my answer, or the answer that I'm trying to give, is that the Republicans, for the longest time, haven't said that yet, but they have employed anti-liberal and deplorable authoritarian tactics. But they have courted a voter base that is staunchly anti-liberal. And it is unsurprising that if you court a voter base and institutions that, again, recourt that voter base, that want to bring forth someone who's more, let's call it, authoritarian, that eventually this ends in a Donald Trump. And that those people especially are...
I don't think I necessarily disagree with that, yeah. I don't know how that I don't think I necessarily disagree with that. Also, because I do have to watch this Live and Learn shit. Give me your final thoughts, or wrap this up. Yeah, what do you got? Or bring us to a landing.
I might return eventually once I've written the outline fully. The point that I'm just trying to make is, or the thing that I want to go back to are twofold. One, when you speak about bad faith actors, it feels like there's one set of rules that we have to adhere to, and that's it. That is not how politics work. If we go to, I don't know, let's imagine we go to like the original liberals. Let's imagine we go to like George Washington or whatever, the Civil War, not the Civil War, the birth of the Americas people. And we have the British who don't represent the Americans in their parliament, and then someone like Washington says, well, those British are bad faith actors. They are not really. They I know they are not representing them, but they are just doing their own thing. And Washington and his cohorts were only able to establish a system that expelled the British through force and through might makes right. The same way wars have been fought in Europe. Let's imagine you're like
yeah, but
John
a war
Stuart Mill.
is definitionally like
Sorry.
trying to destroy the current order and set up a new one now, right? Like we don't want there to be wars in the United States between our two political parties.
Well, so we don't have, just because I say might makes right doesn't mean we have to have a war, but there needs to be a strong reconstitution of how the government works.
I agree with you that
And
like
if-
the rule set can change over time, but there's probably some borders that shouldn't. Like if right now, if Donald Trump were to say today, like I'm gonna send the FBI to go and assassinate Plattner, like I don't think, would you come on tomorrow and say like, well, you know, Democrats maybe need to think about who they want to assassinate when they come in office, right? I don't think you would say that, right?
No, I don't think I would say. Well, I don't think so. No,
Okay,
let's say
yeah.
I don't think so.
Yeah, let's say that. Because that would be like a bridge too far, right? Yeah, go ahead.
Not necessarily, but I think the point that you're making is the bridge too far is your principles. At the end of the day, you need to ask yourself what roads do you not want to take and what bridges do you not want to cross.
I
And within
understand,
that
and we'd have to go
set,
deeper into
yeah.
this, but the broader argument I'm going to make is that like it's not just mine. I think that the Republican strategy relies on a one-sided thing that would necessarily create a worse country if both
Sorry,
sides were to follow it.
I
Yeah.
don't mean you. I mean like you, the Democratic Party. I'm sorry. That
Sure,
was-
but even me, the Democratic Party,
was-
even like broadly speaking, the reason why these rule sets exist is because if both sides broadly follow them, it produces a better outcome for all players involved. And that the Republicans right now have established a rule set that if Democrats were to follow it, it would be over for the country if both sides did it. But they only do it because if they can benefit if only their side follows it.
Okay, just to end on that point.
Sure.
And maybe we can pick this up eventually. Would you say then the goal of the Democrats should be to enforce their rules on the Republicans?
Kind of, yeah. Or at least venture far enough outside their rule sets to match the Republicans to demonstrate that, like, if we both do this, it's going to be a clusterfuck. Like, I think this was best emblemized when AOC said, wow, if you want to get rid of gerrymandering, come sign the fucking legislation. Because Republicans have kind of gotten lit the fuck up a little bit over the gerrymandering stuff. And I think that was good. And I think that, like, I don't know if it'll happen this legislative session coming up, and I don't know 2028 if we'll remember it enough, but like I would say that we're closer now to having like a federal ban on gerrymandering than we ever were, at least in my lifetime. After Republicans have seen, like, if you were to have, like, assume we had a president that wasn't a fucking decrepit, brain dead, crazy authoritarian moron. Assume we had a president who was like, okay, I want to bring the country together and we're going to ban partisan gerrymandering or whatever. I think the country would be in a much more amenable state right now to it than they would have been prior to Democrats, pulling off gerrymanders across several states.
Maybe. I don't want to push you too hard, just to like for time's sake. No, the other thing that I want to leave you with is I feel like Americans have to leave behind the idea that we can have, like I mean just America, we can have a kind of anarchist political state where just everything goes, and irregardless of what you say politically and irregardless of what you do, as long as you don't murder people and as long as you don't, I don't know, incite violence, people can stay in the political discourse. I think there needs to be, like you see this in Germany, where we now have the discourse if the AfD should be banned, where I would say there is a point if you staunchly say in your speeches and to a certain extent in your program, we need to abolish human rights. You are not compatible with the Constitution and you are illegal here. And that structure, that parallel quote unquote institution of the party needs to be banned within the country. And then we have to deal with all the consequences, which might not be easy, but it is better than to just allow someone who openly advocates against the Constitution and the state. And I think I do get that like as an American culturally, that is a very hard pill to swallow, and I don't think I can convince you of this right now. But that is like the following point moving forward, that there is no bad faith. One, because everyone just at the end of the day tries to further their ideology and tries to win, and whoever wins gets to make the rules. And two, as such, Democrats need to move forward and ban every unconstitutional part of the Republican Party.
Okay.
And enforce that rule. Is okay.
All right, I'll keep it in mind.
Any last words? I don't.
No, I'm good.
Okay, can I, like, one sentence ask something very cringe?
Go. What?
Whenever you speak about me, you like say or you use the adage of that European fucker or that neuroscience fucker.
Mm-hmm.
Could you maybe not use that? Not call me a fucker, perhaps?
Oh, I thought you didn't like being called European. I'll think about it, okay?
Oh, haha. Very gracious of you. Have a good evening.
Have fun, bye.
Thank you for having me. Bye.
What a guy.
Would you like to be called shitbag? I mean, what
Whoa!
what does he want to be called? You know what I'm saying? Yes, sir.